This House is in session. Prior to the suspension on yesterday's date, this Honourable Chamber was debating the budgetary proposal and financial statement for 2026. We return to those. Honourable Member for St. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by first thanking the good people of St. Andrew, who despite the many challenges that we face in that area and that constituency, came out in overwhelming numbers and voted for me again to represent their interests here in this honorable chamber. This is something, Mr. Speaker, that I do not take for granted. I do not take for granted the fact that persons right across St. Andrew, whether it be from Orange Hill, Hillaby, Belle Plaine, White Hill, Chalky Mount, depend heavily on me as their MP, as their representative, to come here and speak about matters that impact their daily lives. Mr. Speaker, before I go any further as to how I intend to speak on behalf of my people, I want to first add my voice to the chorus that speaks to the presentation of this budget, Mr. Speaker. The member for Christchurch East Central presented in here on Monday a budget that was measured, but at the same time, it was balanced in the sense that it not only treated matters in the short term, but treated the matters in the long term as well. It looked at persons right across the board, those who were most vulnerable amongst us, especially. And as I go through this presentation this morning, you will see how measures were put in place to ensure that whatever external impacts or internal shocks Barbadians, most vulnerable Barbadians have to face, measures were put in place to cushion those impacts. Mr. Speaker, these are not normal times. In fact, I've heard the term uncertain times used more than once. And whether that was true in the past, what I can tell you is that it's certainly true today. I was joking with a friend of mine, a young man, could be about around 30 years old. And I was telling him, it appears as though we in this generation will see every major disaster that impacted our ancestors, our forefathers, whether it be a global pandemic or global conflict. It looks like we may experience every one of those things. Now, knock on that piece of wood there to hope that we don't experience anymore. But we may experience everything that our forefathers experienced in their lifetime over the past hundreds of years. We may experience it in our lifetime. That's how the world is seen, the direction the world seems to be going in. They were seeing conflicts, rising oil prices, supply chain disruptions. All these things are driving up costs everywhere. These are things that we would have been hearing about for the 60s and the 70s, or through the 80s, and now we are experiencing them almost back to back to back to back. And Barbados, as a small island developing state, a small island, is import dependent. So when these things happen globally, they hit us harder and they hit us faster than maybe some other countries. And the question is not whether we are affected, because we will be affected. but it's how we will respond and how we will protect our people, especially those who are most vulnerable amongst us. And for me, a person coming from the rural part of this country, those in the rural communities, many of whom are even more vulnerable than others right here in Barbados. Mr. Speaker, the multiple crises that we have faced, or we've been forced to face in the recent past, has meant that this government has almost from the very start been in crisis mode. We've had to respond with immediacy to crises in order to cushion the blow, to cushion Bajans from the full impact of these external shocks. We did it during COVID, Mr. Speaker. We did it during the ashfall. We did it after those weather events, the freak storm, followed 2 weeks later by the hurricane. We did it. We did it with the recent conflicts that we've seen in Europe. We're seeing conflicts, well, short conflict, but conflict nevertheless, in the region, and now the conflict in the Middle East. We've had to navigate these issues and these crises, all the while realizing and keeping our eyes on our mandate, which is to safeguard and protect the people of Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, this particular budget, I think, follows in that same vein, as it sought to protect and safeguard the vulnerable people here in this island. And I'm going to go through some of the measures that form part of a relief package, cost of living relief package, that was presented here by the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, that I think warrants repeating and should be repeated every day and repeated by everyone in this honourable place, so that Bajans out there who are listening will understand the measures that were taken to protect them. If you look, and every morning, Mr. Speaker, I get up, not every morning, every night, for the past 2 weeks or so, I spend hours watching international news. I watch Al Jazeera. For some reason, I can't bring myself to watch CNN or Fox, but I tend to enjoy Al Jazeera news for some reason. And I follow the conflict and the discussions and of news about the war in Iran, the impact it's having on fuel prices. And though most people may not even be aware, not most people, there's some people who may not even be aware that there's a war going on in Iran. I am telling you, there are people like that. There are always three kinds of people in this world: those who are involved, those who watch, and those who are not even aware. Believe me when I tell you this. But we have to safeguard all three groups. We have to safeguard all three groups. And those vulnerable persons who are home hustling, trying to make a living, they're not always conscious of what's going on internationally. And they're not conscious of what the international events, how they impact on us here. They may feel it, but they don't understand what is happening. Some people, not everybody, but there's some people like that. But as a responsible government, we have to understand, and we still have to put measures in place. And when I look at some of these measures here, for example, electricity bills, or the government electricity subsidy, a short-term relief measure that government is going to absorb 50% of the increase in fuel-related electricity costs for 3 months. What does that mean to the average person? Now, if the bills go up as a direct result of these fuel prices, the government is going to pay half of the increase. Now, this is going to bring a kind of immediate relief to households, and we already struggle with elect bill as is. And those persons were expecting to see increases. It's still, I believe, it's a good thing that government has seen this and put measures in place to ensure that it does not go up too high, especially the next 3 months, because the world hopes, we're not sure it's going to happen, but the world hopes that this conflict would not go on too long. Nowadays, wars don't go on for 4 and 5 years like they used to. And we hope that one of the major players, because that's what they're saying, may decide, get up one morning and say, you know what, I think we won the war, and we're going to finish it right here. I actually heard some of the analysts say that. But you understand that the government had to do something. And then also on March 31st, the VAT collected on gasoline will be kept at 47 cents. And diesel 37 cents. These are things that impact everyday Bajans. You got to go to work. Everybody got to drive. Everybody drives. Even if you catch a ZR or you catch it's still a cost. So even if the global prices rise, the tax will go beyond these caps that were presented there and proposed by the Minister of Finance. So this is going to help stabilize transportation and also production costs, because when fuel costs go up, production costs goes up right across the board. So that's going to benefit every single person in this country. And for those of us who live in the rural parishes, which are far, who live all down in St. Lucie, all up in St. Andrew, you know, yesterday the member for St. Michael East, we had to make the point that we don't live out in the back. Because they like to say that, they like to say that about us, that we live behind God's back. People in St. Andrew and St. Joseph and them faraway places, not far from town, because we're not far from each other. But what happens is that if you live far away from the city and you work in the city, then obviously you consume a lot more gas. So we that drive from St. Lucie in the north or St. Andrew, all up in Chalky Mount, or up in Bissett, in St. Joseph, that I share my comrade over there, is a good distance, it's a good pull. And then we got to be coming up the hills. So pulling up the hills, most Bajans enjoy just a flat area. But when you're coming from St. Andrew and parts of St. Joseph, you got to pull some hills. And that also pulls at your pocket as well. So any relief in that regard is not only welcome, it's even more welcome in the rural areas, because we feel it more. We feel it a lot more. Everything that people in Barbados experience, we experience it a lot more. And that's right across the board, whether it be roads or congestion or what have you, we experience it more. And fuel prices is rough on us as well. So this is a measure that I know that everybody will welcome. Right? And I could go on and on about the excise tax as well, which would also be reduced from 99 cents, 99.39 cents, and to 89 cents, so 99 cents to 89 cents, to 44 cents and 34 cents respectively on both gasoline and diesel. All these things help to reduce fuel costs. And this will be for a duration of 3 months. And I'm sure that after 3 months, if there's a need to review, there may be a review. But I'll leave that for the Minister of Finance to speak to. But the fact of the matter is that we see in the short term that Bajans would experience a shock, and measures are being put in place to cushion that shock. And that's basically all we're doing here. We're trying to cushion that shock. And then for those persons, and that's indirectly, but indirectly there are other groups in this country. There are the elderly, the pensioners, the persons who are living off of welfare, who would also benefit from the kind and gentle and giving nature of this budget. Because this is a love budget. I can tell you, member for Christchurch, East Central, I was talking to a young lady. I don't know what was gotten into you, but for some reason, you have become somewhat of a celebrity as a direct result of this budget presentation. And now your voice is soothing, and people enjoy listening to you while they work and while they relax. These things were said to me. I do not know. Persons said they never enjoy listening to a budget, how they enjoy listening to you on Monday, Honourable Member. I kid you not. That was said to me. So it's not only were you spreading good news, but the way you said it somehow made people feel good. So there's a good feeling all across Barbados. Of course, there are persons who will try to criticize, who will try to look and think that we can make decisions for 50 years and 40 and 60 years when we live in certain times where we don't know what will happen in the next year or the next week or the next month. I know there are persons like that. People have to find things to criticize. But the fact of the matter is that most Bajans, most right-thinking Bajans, rich or poor, old or young, that listen to this budget and listen to the soothing voice of the Honourable Member are happy and pleased. I'm sharing that with you. Now, I don't want his head to swell up and then we have to lift him out of here. But it's important that he knows. It's important that he knows. So as I said, there are other aspects that I think were raised because people need to know what's coming in their direction. So those pensioners whose pension will be increased by 30%, and then on top of that would also receive the $100 a month. I think that's something that should be highlighted because there are a lot of people there who are struggling. Even with pension, they're still struggling. Not pension, I mean welfare, sorry. Welfare is what I meant. They're still struggling. And that short-term relief is going to help. I know people are saying $100 ain't much, but nowadays nobody ain't coming and putting $100 in your hand just so. You know, it just doesn't happen. So if government is willing to assist you in that regard, then that's something I have to support. For those who have an issue with that, all they have to do if the $100 come their way, they can do like what some people did and give it back or don't take it. But I know most persons who are out there, working class people who would appreciate that $100 in their hands. Also those pensioners those persons who are not receiving any pension. That money will also go a long way in assisting them. Sometimes it's difficult to see some people of a certain age still have to be working hard, you know, and the family not giving them anything. You get that, you see that. It's unfortunate. You know, many people in rural spaces in the countryside where some people might work on plantations all their lives, might have worked as domestics on the plantation or the great house, and they maybe didn't paying those contributions, and now at the age, the pensionable age now, they don't qualify, you know, and they have to depend on children and grandchildren, and sometimes in Barbados it's not like in other cultures where I know there are other areas where people, the grandchildren, the children, they take care of the elderly, they take care of their grandparents, and it's something they do with pride. You know, they would send money back home, or they would send money to their grandparents before they even spend money on themselves. You know, I don't know if that, maybe it's just for some families and some households here in Barbados. It's not as widespread as in some other cultures. And I wish that perhaps it would be like that, because those persons in that age group who find themselves vulnerable would not have to depend heavily, or would not have to depend on the government in the way that they now have to, but would be better taken care of by their families. So I just wanted to mention that group of persons who would benefit from that $100. And there are other benefits for low-income workers too, but I want to, and others will speak to it as they raise this morning, but I want to speak to other aspects that I think also impact the rural parts of Barbados. And I know I don't have a lot of time. I just peeped there. I have like 7 minutes or so. So I'm going to use that 7 minutes just to focus on some of the things that I see coming to St. Andrew. I may very well have to beg for a blight. I've seen it happen, and people get through. So I may very have to. I think one of the talking points right now, especially in the rural space, and it just so happens to be proposed for St. Andrews, this green industrialization gateway advantage, and the potential that it brings to the rural spaces. If it happens to be domiciled in St. Andrew, the parish, but that part of St. Andrew, anyone can tell you, it just borders with St. Peter. And I am sure that any innovation, any industry that comes to that part of St. Andrew will not only benefit persons living in St. Andrew itself, and I'm sure that it will, but it will also benefit those persons living in the north. Right now, we have to travel too far sometimes in order to work in Barbados. We have to travel too far. We have to come all the way from St. Lucie. We have to come all the way from Chalkmore, and it's difficult sometimes to get there. So if we have this kind of industry being built out in the north, I support that. And I tell you, I said it in here, and I will say it again. I know that in the rural spaces, we are usually not the first persons to get, we're not the first place to get any kind of innovation. And when it comes, persons will look at it with a bit of suspicion. And people say, but why? Why St. Andrew? Why are you coming down here? Why not Christ Church? Why not in St. Michael or in St. Thomas, where everything seems to be building out right now? Why come St. Andrew? And they start to look for the negatives and start to see, wait. But we're already water scarce. And this plant is going to consume a lot of water. And things like that people would say, as if the water that's down there is being used for anything other than to harbor mosquitoes in some cases, or for fish ponds. I talk about the water in Greenland now, where this particular facility is going to be built. Now, if anybody knows me, they know that I'm one that supports the preservation of the natural flora and fauna of any place, and St. Andrew being one of the more ecologically diverse parts of Barbados, obviously it would not want to see any type of development come to St. Andrew that would jeopardize the natural beauty, the pristine beauty of St. Andrew. But I also recognize that every generation has a responsibility to adapt to the environment and build out. If you look at a footage of Barbados, and I've seen footage of Barbados from the 1950s, most of those places where now host commercial buildings and residential areas and so on, were all cane field. They're all cane. I wrote a paper some years ago called From Cane Garden, and it literally meant cane gardens, because the entire island was like a garden, to once the garden, to show how development has changed over years. So yes, St. Andrew's pristine. Yes, we would love it to remain that way, but at the same time, we want to see investment. We want to see development like anybody else. We want to see industry come to St. Andrew like any place else in Barbados. We want to see our infrastructure built out and develop, our roads finish. We want to see our community being on the forefront of innovation. That's what we want to see. In St. Andrew, there are people with ambitions, people who work hard, intelligent, bright, just like every place else in Barbados, and just like everything else that everybody has. We want to see that come to St. Andrew. So even though we know that this type of infrastructure is not what people associate with St. Andrew because of its pristine nature, I still support something like this coming because I know the benefits that would accrue to the people in that part of Barbados, in the northern part of Barbados, would be great. I know that people, even in the short term, as it relates to construction, will get work. I know we also have the intellectual capital in St. Andrew, because we always blow people's minds, right? When people see the type of talent that comes out from St. Andrew, you know. I don't know if it's because they don't expect it, because I don't understand why they wouldn't expect it. But I know people are often fascinated by the type of talent and the creative nature of the people of St. Andrew. And when I say St. Andrew, I mean the entire constituency, inclusive of the parts of St. James and St. Thomas that makes up the constituency. Now, I wouldn't want to speak about St. Andrew without speaking about the agricultural incentives that were mentioned by the Honourable member. I see a number of incentives. Right now, we already have a pretty vibrant bee farming industry. We have a bee farming history in St. Andrew. There are a number of persons who farm bees. I didn't know before I went in that it was a thing, but there are people who do it right across St. Andrew. And the fact that we're now getting a rebate on some of the equipment that's used in that field is a step in the right direction, because obviously we want to encourage more persons to go into this bee farming. Remember, he said he was a bee. I'm also a bee, a very strong bee. And I will support anything that improves and enhances the lives of bees, whether it be the little buzzing ones or the many thousands of bees that reside in the constituency of St. Andrew. And then we have a good couple thousand residing right across Barbados. So I support the initiative. Also, we have a number of farmers, poultry farmers. They saw just now an initiative where persons would get a rebate on a kind of paint. If you know anything about chicken farming, on roof paint, if you know anything about chicken farming, one of the challenges that most farmers have is the overheating of the pens. You lose a lot of birds through overheating. And if you can use, if technology is such that you can use a kind of paint in the roof that would reduce the heat within that space and save the life of those birds, then that's something that I'm sure that most farmers will welcome. And many farmers in St. Andrew who engage in poultry farming will welcome such an initiative, especially given the fact that you can get 100% rebate up to $15,000. So basically, I don't think it's going to take $15,000 to paint any roof, so you more or less getting that free of cost. I know that I also see a rebate on cameras. Video larceny is still a big thing in the rural parishes. That's one of the things that you go down to St. Andrew, you see a lot of land there, and I'm saying this so that my colleague here to the right from Christchurch South, and I just want to make the point that I used to look across there in the past, and somebody from Christchurch South, a member from Christchurch South, sat in that area, but it was never as pleasant a view, never pleasant. I often would find myself looking in the opposite direction daily, avoid looking up there, but now I can see there's still a member of Christchurch South, and much more pleasant to look at when the days come. But I would say this to you, when you go into St. Andrew, you see a lot of unused land. But one of the difficulties that we have, apart from the fact that there's no real water infrastructure in the areas where persons want to do farming, is that the teething, man, Peter Larson, the teething, it's just too much. Because unless you live down there in the space, somebody's going to reap your crops. And if you can put measures in place to ensure people can better secure their crops, yes, we put measures, legislation in place to condone harder on the crooks, on the thieves when we catch them. But that's if we catch them. And they move late at night. And they move in darkness. And so you don't usually catch them. So then you come the next day, you see the end results. You see your crops disturbed. You see everything gone. And you out of pocket thousands and thousands of dollars. So any measure that would assist farmers in safeguarding their crops, I support. Now I want to say to you, member for Christchurch South, that we still have too much land in that area that is not been allocated. And I think that there are too many young people in St. Andrew and Scotland district that are into farming. A good example would be the Project Dawn program, where every day, every week, just every day, because they call it weekly, we have young people calling, trying to get land on which to farm, on which to grow food. They got some assistance through Project Dawn with some equipment and some planting materials and so on. And people are seeing the results of that. We have young people now who can now produce food, sell food, make a living, feed their families. We're seeing that. And I would like to see more of that and less of the bush. I have no problem with bush. All these trees, these mossy trees that grow up so tall and so quickly, that block the view, that when you're coming out Turners Hall, you can no longer see the beautiful East Coast anymore. I would love to see all of that gone and replaced with crops. I would love to see that. And I know that we have the manpower, not only in St. Andrew, I'm sure there are people from all over Barbados who work the lands in Turners Hall. But I would love to see more of that land into cultivation, because it would not only benefit the good people in Scotland district, but it would benefit Barbados as a whole. And we become more self-sufficient. And you know that food security is something that we cannot take for granted going forward, given the crisis now in the world. So as I conclude, and I'm going to conclude before I get the nod. I looked up there, I saw that the speaker gave me the eye.
I did? Honourable, I did?
Yes, he gave me the eye. I understand what the eye means. Right? I want to finish how I started. These are not normal times. There's nothing normal about how 2026 started. There's nothing normal. And there's nobody here in this place or in the other place that can sit down and tell you with any confidence that we can operate going forward as usual. It cannot be business as usual going forward. These are crazy times. And if this government has to put measures in place, it must be able to capture and remedy situations in the short term, while at the same time thinking about long-term measures. But we have to protect our people. We have to cushion our people. It cannot be a situation as while the grass is growing, the horse is starving. We have to put things now to make sure that our people can survive this hardship. I don't know what others are doing, but I can see what we are doing. I can see what the member for Christchurch East Central has done, what the Prime Minister has done. And just like everybody else in Barbados. I am pleased. And I want to fully associate myself with these budgetary proposals and this appropriation bill. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for St. Philip North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And good morning to all in the chamber. First of all, I want to thank some people or some entities for getting me where I am here today in this chamber for a third consecutive term. Obviously, most of it goes to the Father, God, for allowing me to be here. I also want to thank, in all earnest, my family and friends who supported me throughout. Believe it or not, Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central was one of my greatest supporters. Whether he said it verbally or by just a look, I know he supported me to the very end, because politics really is not easy. Politics is not easy. We face a lot, whether it be by social media. You have to protect your children and your families from what's said. They pick at what you wear. They pick at everything. And it's not an easy battle, but I am grateful for the opportunity to be here. I want to say at the outset that I wholeheartedly support the budgetary proposals. Somebody's on social media right now chasing their tails, saying that we have done nothing for the poor or for the middle class, and I disagree strongly. This is one budgetary proposal that I agree with all of the 141 pages that I saw last night and this morning when I reread it. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, the quote of the Minister of Finance looks good on the Honourable Member, and I hope he continues to wear it. I read a quote from the Pricewaterhouse report, like I usually read after the budget, and I found it most fitting if I'm permitted to read it. It said, "This is a budget that recognizes the limits of what a small island developing state can fiscally absorb in the face of a global energy shock, while simultaneously refusing to stand idle." And that is the best description I have for this budget so far over the last few days. I agree with it strongly. Many members in here, if not all that spoke so far, spoke in earnest over and over again. Is now a mantra of what the budget holds for poor people, middle class people, everybody for that matter. We spoke at length on the cost of living, on the national security and crime, agriculture, health, traffic congestion, and the list continues. Cost of living, member after member spoke about the absorption by government of 50% of the fuel clause adjustment to the electricity bills. This is something that not only my constituency, but the whole of Barbados, including myself, will enjoy. Day after day, I'm sure all of the members in here, when they do their constituency clinics, I do it every day, 5 to 7 days a week. And one of the main things that comes through, apart from wanting jobs, is difficulties with paying utility bills. The electricity being one, water being the other. And I look forward sometime in the future, when all of this global crisis is over, that we will relook some of the taxes on the water bill, especially for people that live in areas that do not contribute to the sewage system. I know Peter paying for all, but I would like that to be considered. I have quite a few constituents whose water has been cut off and able to make some sort of arrangement with the BWA at this time. I am grateful for that. Capping of the VAT on gasoline and diesel, that is especially important for those in rural districts. The honourable member that spoke before me knows this, that the traveling from rural areas to what I call town to the city could be hiring not only traffic congestion, but with fuel costs, and of course that increases with travel congestion. The honourable member for St. Michael Northwest I think he used to pull out what little hair he had because I could not make meetings before 9:30 any morning when he was the minister of the Ministry of Health, any morning. So we were grateful for that. What is important to us too, the duty-free and VAT-free thresholds for personal imports. The honourable member, yesterday, one of them spoke about the Shein and the Temus and whoever else, but the truth is, a lot of Barbadian families rely on imports for clothing and sometimes food, as the costs here are not exactly affordable. Many times you see something that costs $10 overseas, and by the time it reaches here is $150, which is a little bit unreasonable. So a lot of people depend on importation of things like that. Personal income tax deductions, well, that was straightforward. I'm particularly impressed with the increase in the reverse tax credit and the introduction of reverse tax credit for those between $25,000 and $35,000 income per year. Cost of living cash credit, which everybody spoke about. I am particularly happy with this. Up to last week, I had a pensioner, not a pensioner of pension age, who did not qualify for the NISS, is 3 S's? NISS benefits because of lack of contributions, whether it be he was self-employed, and many people like that, although NISS has advertised ad nauseum about the importance of contributions to the fund so that you live after you cannot work. But there are many people out there who never contributed one, or who worked for people that never contributed, or the companies went bankrupt, or the companies got up and left the country, and they don't know how they will live. And these people have the potential to live. You know, we have a lot of centenarians, the 100 years, where is the money coming from? I am really grateful for that as it stands now. Grateful for the extension of the excise and VAT holidays on electric vehicles. We are trying to reduce our carbon print, of course. A small country, but it's still important. That is important. I want to move on to things like security and crime in the time I have. I will add in some more things, time permitting. I applaud the construction of a police station in 6 roads. We will all benefit, not only those of us in St. Philip, but everybody will benefit. With the courts and everything, District C has been almost out of commission now for a little while. We welcome that. I am impressed with the continuation of the recruitment drive for police officers. They are well needed. I really did not realize the numbers were so low till I read the budget speech. I welcome the removal of customs and VAT on importation and installation of security cameras and dash cams and alarm systems and the such. People will benefit from that. I've been eyeing a security system for months now, waiting for the price to come down. So all of these ring well for all of us in here, not only the general public. And I'm not cheap, as I heard before. I have no problem in essence with the 2 gun courts that have been or will be introduced. I understand that that was discussed even before now. I read a few cases, well, not a few cases, a few newspaper articles that was in discussion way before now. I have no fundamental problem with it. The honourable member for the city mentioned Jamaica, but I went reading myself as I always do, and although it may have worked the first time in Jamaica, the backlog is now a problem, and that is a serious concern for us in Barbados, generally within the court system. Will it fall into the rut of a backlog again? I pray not. In fact, I would love to see, before I retire, the extinction of a gun court. And I say this, don't misinterpret me. I would like to see the gun crime being as low, so low, that we don't even need a gun court. But my question is, what else comes with the gun court? We have a lot of young people that are being arrested and charged for gun crimes, whether it be murders or just harms or shootings or whatever. Will there be a part on the gun court for rehabilitation? I know we're getting them off the streets, but for young people, I read in some jurisdictions, the youth below 25 are not only arrested, charged, going through the gun court, but there's attendant rehab for these people while they're off the streets, or when they're on the streets and just, where they are taught counsel on the importance of gun crimes, the effects of gun crimes. I'm wondering if that is a part of it in terms of rehab. These are the kind of things I'm wondering. But with the Guncourt, I see that as end-stage disease, when the disease has taken over and we are now trying to get the patient living a little longer. I am interested in at the beginning of the stream. What are the plans for that? I think we need to start from young, primary, secondary schools. In fact, teachers oftentimes can give you a fairly good idea of, this sounds bad, but the criminals in the making in schools. And I think at that point, we need to put some measures in place to tackle this. I have known, in fact, one of them was my patient, the honorable member for the city knew him well too. My mother taught him. From the time he was at school, he was quote-unquote trouble. Nobody did much. The family background was poor. And we kind of knew that that was the direction he was going in. He got killed. Was it last year, year before? He got killed. In fact, I have about 3 patients that were involved in crime, and we could trace back from early, and all of them got killed. My patient load is now decreased because of this foolishness. All of them got killed. I think we need to tackle things early. We need to put things in tandem. Yes, there's family court and so on, to identify properly these individuals who are exposed to abuse, children in the family. Abusers breed abusers. Some are being abused by both parents, some are being abused by one parent, some are seeing their parents being abused, one or the other. Some are seeing fighting within the home. Some are exposed to marijuana and other drugs before they start school. Many times teachers will tell you children are coming to school high. These are evolving things that put people in prison. I think the Guncourt needs to be buttressed with all of these things, not just to stand alone to say we're getting people off the street. As I said, don't have a problem with it, but we need to deal with a lot of things prophylactically. Other things that I think, personally, I think are attendant, Mr. Speaker. I've said it before, you hear it, and I'll say it again. The laws surrounding marijuana use are being misinterpreted on the outside. Many people are thinking it is now legal when it is not. I think the public needs to be educated and educated and educated. I have seen cases where people sit on rolling splits and the police, overburdened as they are, pass. I've seen that. We need to make it clear as a government that marijuana use is not legal. I know we have the 14 grams, but I think this has led to the decay in the criminal system in Barbados. The other thing I want to speak of, and I wish this government or any other to follow will revisit it. Every day going to Arson College, some other schools, I know my friends going to pick up their children. And Mr. Speaker, when they hit the gate, the hairstyles or lack thereof. When I was at St. Michael's School, you could not even walk the street with a belt unbuckled without being suspended the next day. Mark my word. The grooming, apart from the hair, has now become dismal. And I don't really care what anybody says. This is contributing to the indiscipline in our country. There is not a matter of plait hair, or some people just don't comb the hair for weeks. Boys and girls, and it looks awful. And nobody can tell me that between the marijuana and the indiscipline and the grooming or lack thereof practices in our schools, that is not contributing to indiscipline in the country. It might sound small, but all of these things add up. Every dollar eventually adds up to 100. All of these things add up, and I'm concerned because I have a child in school and she will come out to face some of these people. The truth is the majority of young people don't get into trouble, but we remember the bad more than the good. And I am afraid she's now 13. She will be coming to a time when she says, "Mommy, I want to go to a fete." I can't sleep. You're frightened that somebody, she told me the other day that she does not want to go. I said, "You want to go to the Gold Cup?" "No, Mommy, I'm frightened for the violence." By the next day, it was the newspapers, young women fighting. That could have been worse than it is. I heard one of the call-in program people, well-known individuals, speaking about a friend of his who came to the Gold Cup and he stopped somebody that was driving recklessly. That hurt my heart. And he got out of the car to speak to him, why are you driving like this? And tutus, the guy was pushed down. And now if he hasn't died already, is fighting for his life overseas. We can't do this. I find people are angry on the road. Two occasions. I had the opportunity, if you call it that, coming around the roundabout. I was in the right of way, and one of the taxis, the vans, came within an inch of me to prove what part I do not know. People are angry. And you're so scared to confront them because a gun or knife might come at you. We really got to do something. And I'm glad the Honourable Member for the City and the government has taken responsibility to try to fight this crime issue, but it has to start at the mouth of the stream and not at the end of the stream where it enters the sea. Can we consider mandatory or compulsory community service for those who are idling? For those who have been in trouble with the law at some point in time? Can we give them community service? Can we get them to work voluntarily in the hospitals or the nursing homes? I don't want to say cut grass, but I want them to be involved in something where they can see how they can benefit, where they can be around old people that have built this country. Grandmothers and granddads that came up without poor, but had nothing to do with crime. Can we start that? Can we involve the Barbados Defense Force, the police service, other entities like that to get some discipline put back in this country, which is falling hard when it comes to crime? And you know what? I don't know how to do it. This is one time I can't give a suggestion, but this new culture that we have in Barbados, where the pants down by your knees and you're wearing a belt, I can't figure it out. That kind of new culture that has come from the prison system in the States. All of these things add up, Mr. Speaker. All of these things add up. We have to do something with the cultural practice. We have to do something with the culture, and it is alive and well that parents can abuse the children, because when you hit them or one another, when you hit them, that's love. I don't know in which world. But there are people that think like that. I have had cases. I had a lady once that her head get burst open. Yes, we filing charges and I writing police report like a fool. By the time it healed, she's back in the house. We got to get rid of this culture. As I said, I don't know how. The social workers have to come into play and other entities that know better than I do. But all of these things are contributing to where we are. But I leave crime now, and I want to go to agriculture. I want to really sincerely congratulate the previous minister for agriculture, my colleague in Constituency, for doing the job he has done thus far. And I want to encourage the new member, the new minister, to follow suit, and I'm sure she will. Like the Honourable member for St. Andrew that spoke, I'm impressed with the beekeeping initiative. I know that some of the schools, at least when they did sixth form at Lodge, they had a beekeeping program. We could probably introduce it more into the schools. There are entities that sell all of these supplies, and it's really impressive if we could do a local production, no issues. I like the $5,000 rebate on organic materials. That is where the world is going. Things that are organic are being sold for times more than regular. It's hard in Barbados because we've used so many pesticides that are organic is hard on a mass basis. The roof paint. I have a little chickens, as I told you when it was the land tax I had. How many? It's up now to about 45. I will be applying for that rebate. That's just on the side. But I asked the question, what else? And I tend to have all types, all jobs, all owners of businesses in my constituency, like most people, and we have a farming community. And I oftentimes speak to the farmers, whether they're in my community or elsewhere. I had the opportunity to speak to a young individual. He's young. I buy my meat from him. I was looking for a black, young Barbadian businessman to contribute to. And he was one, and he's a bright fella. He said to me, the pork farmers are having issues with competing with overseas imports. In other words, their prices have to drop tremendously to get the stock out. I don't know what we will do for that. I don't know, some sort of subsidy, which I will bring to you just shortly, talk on that with respect to food farmers. They're crying out for subsidies. Honourable member has shook his head. Overseas markets, the government subsidize farmers so that when there are peaks and troughs in production, the population gets a decent price for their goods, for buying the goods, and the farmers can stay afloat, because oftentimes if there's a glut, prices have to drop. But that has nothing to do with what the farmer had to put into that crop. So subsidies, as one of them told me, and he actually said that there's a study out there, I don't know the study, I will look for it, that says out of every 5 farmers in the Caribbean, in 5 years there's 1 left. Because of these kind of things, they can't support it. There's pre-deal larceny, there's the cost of fertilizers, there's the cost of chemicals, there's the cost of feed. And I think that's a worthwhile venture if we are to learn from what COVID did with tourism. We probably will never be able to sustain our country with food, only us. But we have learned a lot from COVID, and I think other things need to come to the fore in case another COVID is brewing in terms of war. Not brewing, it has started in the world, and these are things we need to look at. Give me a minute. Right, so I really don't know the cost analysis. Somebody will have to do that in terms of these subsidies, but it might be worth looking at. Healthcare, I really did not hear a lot of it in the estimates, not a lot either in the budget. But what I will thank the Honourable Minister for is the promise of the expansion of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital by what, 40%? I paid attention. And the promise of rehab and rebuild of several of the polyclinics on the island. I really appreciate it. I was happy to see about the illegal importation of medicinals. But what I want to add here, I was on the Medical Council for a bit. I stand corrected on my statement, but there were several entities on island that found a way to get drugs on the shelves that were prescription drugs, selling over the counter, things that for bleaching that can really harm an individual. People don't think bleaching is harmful, but it's extremely harmful. It could get to the point where it can kill somebody. And these are on the shelf, and the Medical Council had no teeth, had no real teeth to get the police on board to shut down these entities. They're going to shut them down, take the goods, and by the next week, wherever they start them, they're back on the shelves. These are things, I know of cases in Jamaica, a lady that had died because of bleaching. Her immune system was shot, and when she got sick, she could not withstand infection. These things are dangerous, and we need to put measures in place where the Medical Council has enough teeth that they could do something about this. I want to address things, these are things for the near future, the rebuilding and so on. I want to address things, you're looking at the clock, Mr. Speaker, I hope I have a lot of time. How much time I have left?
You're doing well.
Good.
I remember you're doing very fine.
Thank you. I want to talk about the now for now things within health. I know rebuilding, and I don't know when that will be completed. I want to deal with the now for now. I want to deal with the backlog. I heard the minister in the Ministry of Health spoke very well, and I was happy with his speech yesterday. I heard it. But what are we doing now for now? The hip replacements. I have a young lady, when I say young, she's workable age, on the higher end, but she can work. Hips gone. Only solution is hip replacement. 2 solutions: hospital to fix it, private to fix it. Her husband does not work. She has a job that she can't go to. A hip replacement on the replacement is $40,000 on the outside. You should not have to pay that much to walk, but doctors make their living. You should not have to pay that much to walk. It's not a privilege. You should not have that to pay $5,000 for cataract removal. Eyesight is not a privilege. So if we cannot afford this on the outside, we need to do something now, for now, at the QEH. And it's not a matter of the notes being lost. Yes, that is a part of it. But that is not the majority of it. The same crime, these gunshots and so on, you got patients that broke the leg or ladies that lie down in the bed and can't get the surgeries because this crime has taken over the QEH. Unacceptable. I have people in there for months with broken legs and can't get surgery because every time they're booked, some clown shoots somebody else and the surgeries are put back. That's the reality. That is the reality of it. What are we doing with the elder for care? I need to know, I would love to know, when the two things, when the new geriatric hospital will be opened, and when those patients are moved, how much space is left for this phase to take up these elderly for care, to take up the ones in the community, that the family, and you know, I say this oftentimes, yes, there are some people out there that neglect the elderly, but there are some that have no choice. We have grandparents in this country that are 30-somebody years old, working. So grandparents working, children that have any children working, nobody else is there to help these old people, and the truth is, a lot of them, once they get sick, they don't return for them. They do not return for them. To take them home for what? To do what? There's a source to start. They really can't help it. What is the capacity of this geriatric hospital when the ones that are in the old geriatric hospital have moved over? I know it's supposed to come in 2 phases, but I worry about these old people. I really do. And the young for care, the elder for care, all of these people for care, they really need care. We need to find practical solutions, and I think we have many. We have the assisted living in the nursing homes. We have the geriatric facilities. St. Lucie at one point, I'm not sure if that's closed, house some of these people with the elderly, but these are things that we need to know, the public needs to know. Every day on the calling program, and I don't listen to it often, but once I turn on the radio, it's either a gentleman from my constituency that cussing me, or somebody talking about QEH. One or the other. People need answers. Traffic congestion, Lord knows I'm appreciation of the Passovers. That's one disease this country has, that when a good initiative comes from one government, the government changes, good or bad, it tossed one side. We're suffering with this traffic. As I said, the honourable member that had the Ministry of Health before with me had a hell of a time getting me to work. Because after I drop my daughter to school, you spend an hour, you know, you probably grumble behind my back that I just can't get there. But that's how it was. And I am grateful for it. But I want to discuss other options. Flexi time, that has been touted several times. Some offices do it. Flexi time to get these people off the road. That's one option. Remote work. When COVID taught us this, you know. COVID taught us this, but half of the time we lost the lesson. I know private entities that shut down for COVID, everybody working from home and never started back. They save on rent, they save on electricity, they save on gas, they don't have to sit in traffic. We know this. We need to institute it. Remote work, flexi hours, improvement in the public transport. And it pains me to say this because public transport has been one of these things that has been a political topic for decades. Right now, at least in my area, the wait times have been increasing for transport. I know people that wait 3 hours in the bus stand to get up to St. Philip. She's supposed to call me back, but I attempted to discuss with the Transport and Works, the bus routes. There are some new bus routes that are wreaking havoc in my community, in my constituency, and I mean to look at that. But if I had a good transport system, I believe everybody in here, that you know, the bus coming at 8 o'clock, I could park my car and get down the road. All of this improves traffic congestion, and it's nothing better than being driven. You see things that you don't see when you drive. I would love a transport system, and I put it to the honourable member. I know he can do it, where the timing can be relied upon, and we have a look, sit down and have a look at the routes. I would be happy to do that with you and the members. But these are some of the things. Right, I had a list for time permitting, so I hope time permitting. I like the idea of de-risking mortgages. Right now, I have more than a few members in the community that are having trouble with mortgages in terms of paying and refinancing. One of them was refinance, paying X amount for the longest time, on time, and all of a sudden, the bank called and said, "You want to carry this money, you in debt." Something has to be put in place, and I'm hoping that this is what this means to help these people, low-income people, with respect to their mortgages. Housing, always needed, everywhere. High-rise, as the Honourable Member for the City said, everybody has that in their head. High-rise apartments probably is the way to go. The rent-to-own option, which is coming on board, but you still have people going down to the Ministry of Housing to apply for rent-to-own, and they ask for mortgage certificate. Need I say more, Mr. Speaker? They're renting all the time for the last 20 years, and all of a sudden a mortgage certificate to prove you could pay rent. That has to stop. I think I spoke to the Honourable Member on it already. We have several housing developments in St. Philip, north as well. And I heard somebody told me that I'm allowed 60% of the housing stock that comes to the constituency. I am sure I am nowhere near there. And I'm going to check on it and beat it down. I'm also noticing a trend with these low-income houses. People buy under the guise of low income and then some big monstrosities on the property. I don't know if anybody else has noticed it. It's alive and well in St. Philip. Where is the low income factor? Either the social workers in the ministries or what have to crack down. Because you build in a big house and my people that can't afford all of this, still home with an abusive boyfriend or mother, can't get somewhere to live. We need to look at these things, Mr. Speaker. We spoke about access for the disabled, but remember that we have disabled that traverse the countryside too. With all the roads that are coming, and thank you so much for the road that I have by the district hospital that have been complaining, it has started. But there are people that want to exercise with a cane and they're scared of the traffic. So every new bill of the road, I heard sidewalks are going there. Kudos to the ministry. But we too need something for the disabled up there. Disabled that come to town live in country too. But I'm grateful for it. Solar energy, the initiative, electric vehicles, I like. It is time now that every house should have photovoltaic. Problem is, it's hard to afford. It's hard to afford. 3 people live in my house. Yeah, your house big, but only 3 of us live there. And my estimate is $75,000. I try with the bank, but that ain't work. And if I can't get it, other people can't get it. I remember BNOT, it changed the name. You know what I mean. BNOT had an initiative, wonderful, that you pay them back every month. I applied for it, but they won't look at my application until it was too late. But the point is, I think things like that through government, just like we do the trust loans, or get a payback system that people can afford it. That's the drive to get away from these fossil fuels as much as we can. Probably not forever, not all of it, but as much as we can. Quickly, sports. I am grateful for the lighting at the Tree Houses Resource Center, St. Mark's Resource Center. But one of the things I heard the Honourable Member saying that he, terms of monetizing sports. Great idea. But we need to look at things like scholarships, sponsorship. I got 1 or 2, some money for 2 of my constituents that had the opportunity to go overseas for sports training. There's no reason that Barbados can't be at the top of the ladder. Jamaica licking us left, right, and center because they have things put in place. They take sports extremely seriously. I met a gentleman the other day that had a scholarship, had to return to the country because he could not contact who he needed to contact in the ministries to pay for the 2nd year because somebody was on vacation. In this day and age, Mr. Speaker, on vacation, when the Honourable Member that sits beside me is on vacation from his practice, I'm sure he had people working in the place. We cannot lose the opportunities for young people like that. I have people that can't get money that got into reputable schools in the States for theater arts. I had to give it up. He's working on a ship now. Things like that, we really got to get serious with. I think those are the main things that I wanted. Oh, land issues. People need help with that. Everybody can't afford a lawyer to do it. And I brought it to the attention of the Honourable Member, a constituent who has been squatting, but more than the Honourable Member for St. Michael East needs help with these things. She was there for, I think, 15 years. I do not know what the laws are, I forget. But people like that need a little help. She could not figure out who the owner was and all of that. And we spoke about, one of the bills that were brought in here spoke about that, and helping people to navigate those issues. That is important. Not that I encourage squatting, I really do not. But some people feel that they can do better. And I am scared for that particular individual because she's in a strange place. Very bright children, but it's a dangerous place where she isn't. If I could have something happening where you can get a house for her, oh yeah, we could get a house for her once I speak to the minister. But people need help with those kind of things. But in all, we have to face like things like now that this unrest in the world is happening. We have to face things like our low unemployment rate. Kudos to the government. But these things hang in the balance with pressures from externally. We have to consider these things. I'm almost scared about it. But so far, and I will wrap it here by saying, through you to the Honourable Minister of Finance, I am pleased with the proposals. You have my full and unwavering support thus far. Thus far. I appreciate the proposals and I support them wholeheartedly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your time.
Honourable Member St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution in this debate on the Appropriation Bill 2026. Mr. Speaker, while I will speak on behalf of the hard-working people of my constituency, whose voices and concerns I'm honored to bring to this Honourable House, I intend to focus on a few areas that were presented in the Appropriation Bill by the good member for Christchurch East Central, who is now referred to as the Barry White of Parliament. But Mr. Speaker, at the outset though, let me thank the people of St. George South for yet again placing their confidence in me to represent them for the fourth time in this honorable chamber. And I heard the member for St. Andrew said he don't take it lightly. Me either, sir. I think it is indeed a privilege to speak on behalf of thousands of persons who repose their confidence in you every 3 to 4 years or 5 years, and to see development year after year as we come to this chamber to put forward our budgetary proposals. And indeed, I also want to thank the Almighty God and those many pastors who send up prayers for me or wherever they sent the prayers. And indeed, it has been a rough 2 years, last 2 years, and I've weathered the storm. And on behalf of this great party, I'm here again to represent the people of St. George South. Mr. Speaker, I thank the government for the continued good work to guide our country through these challenging and turbulent economic times while keeping the welfare of people at the center of national policy. And I was referring this morning to a song by Jack Cure. These are some serious times. And it speaks not only to crime in Jamaica, but geopolitical issues in the world. And this song is fitting as I dive into the estimates and as I dive into the budget, and I address some of these issues. Mr. Speaker, when I walk the communities of my constituency, St. George South, when I speak with parents, young people, small business owners, senior citizens, they often remind me that while our national policies are debated in Parliament, the true impact is felt in the homes and in the communities. The people I represent, they are hard-working people. They want opportunity, and they also want good leadership that they've received, and I guess that's why they've reposed the confidence in me and in this government for the third time successively. And Mr. Speaker, our aim is to build a better Barbados for our families and our people. They're not asking for handouts. They're asking for opportunities, fairness, and like I said, responsible leadership. Mr. Speaker, I want to focus on 4 areas of the budget: roads and infrastructure, small business development, community safety and security, and hopefully time will permit me to get into energy. One of the issues constantly raised, Mr. Speaker, by the residents is the condition of the roads, drainage, and infrastructure in the communities. Many of these roads, Mr. Speaker, have served St. George South, our communities, for decades. But years of wear and tear and increased traffic and weather patterns, drainage challenges have taken their toll on the roads. Residents all over this country, they speak about potholes, deteriorating surfaces, and drainage issues. But, Mr. Speaker, I welcome the budgetary proposals, the investment in infrastructure and rehabilitation. I heard the member for St. Philip South mention the overpass. And I recall with the member for St. Michael South East, when we came to public life, we sat over there and we shadowed public works. And indeed, Trieste was in our minds. Overpasses were in our minds. And I heard the member for St. Philip North, said how they choked the baby with the bath water. That's how he turned it. You said it otherwise. And that's what they did. But, Mr. Speaker, the whole issue of infrastructure and rehabilitation is at the forefront of these budgetary proposals. And we understand, I heard the member for Christchurch East Central spoke about the need to get back, widening of the highways, overpasses. But I stay parochial for the time being, because within rural Barbados, and specifically within St. George, the terrain and the layout of St. George South give rise to a wider geographic spread supported by an extensive road network. And why I'm saying that, in the urban corridor, you will find short roads, some long roads, but in rural Barbados, you have many long roads. To the point that by virtue of the geography, we are characterized by a broad spatial footprint. And whereas I can give an example, in Workman's and Jordan, it is one gully that separates Jordan and Orange Estate from the Ellerton community. It's a 3-minute walk. But guess how long you have to drive to get there? You have to drive a mile to get there. So when you fix a road, and the member for Christchurch essentially lives pretty close to where I'm talking about, traveling by foot, you take 3 minutes. You just walk through a gully. But because of the wide geographic spread, we have to focus on a lot more roads in rural Barbados than in the urban corridor. So when I speak to 27 roads in 7.5 years, person said, well, you get a lot of roads. But at the end of the day, because of the spread, not only in St. George South, St. George North, St. Joseph, St. Andrew, St. Thomas, we have to get more roads and get our fair share, and we have to start looking at the geographic spread and stop talking about the number of roads we have fixed in these areas. And I just want to mention that because it is a critical point. But I move on, and I want to thank this government, those ministers before who championed, member for Christchurch West, member for St. Michael West Central, member for St. Michael Southeast, and now my good friend, member for St. Michael South, who I know will carry on the work. There are a number of roads in St. George South, don't mind the 27 roads in the 7.5 years. They're in very bad state. Roads such as Drexel Woods, you know, this gentleman who lives in Drexel Woods, and I won't say who else lives in Drexel Woods, but there are some prominent persons who live in Drexel Woods. And we don't do roads based on prominent persons. We have persons with disability who live in Drexel Woods. And this young man, you know, he said to me, he said, politicians before you, my mentor, Saluito, spent 30 years. He said, my colleague who I went to school with before me, the former minister of the Democratic Labour Party who represented St. George South, and I hate to call names, but Dr. Esther Suku, she spent 10 years. 30 and 10, 40. Road in touch yet. But I want to thank this government because the member for St. Michael Southeast assured me that that road will be done, Drexel Woods, the road in Drexel Woods, to assist a young man with disability. An ambulance can't get in that area. They have to bring their garbage 200 meters so the sanitation truck can pick it up. In this day, we shouldn't be living like this. I took the member for Christchurch West Central there, and he saw it. I took the member for St. Michael Southeast, and she saw it. And I intend to take my good friend, the member for St. Michael South. He said he will come with me. But I know that the roads have been allocated, and I want the people of Drexel Woods and Drexel to know that this government, after over 40 years, will fix the road, and monies have been allocated. We heard the member for St. Michael for Christchurch East Central mention the amount of roads that will be done. And we'll get our fair share. So while I'm here outlining the roads that are to be done, I'm also happy that this government continues to put infrastructure, road rehabilitation, and drainage at the forefront. Briggs Hill, Drexel Woods to Bates Village, Ellerton Main Road where I grew up, Jamoon Shop to Salisbury. These are roads that have been identified. And I want to thank this government again for solving a safety issue. The roundabout at Lower Graves, Windsor Junction. I heard the pundits talking about we acquire too much land. But when it comes to safety, we can't be talking about acquiring too much land. Because the studies and the technical studies that were done, most of the pundits are not engineers, but yet they want to come and say to you that we acquire too much land. Where's the science? Show me the science that we have acquired too much land for that roundabout. We have to come from four sides. A lay-by, drainage issues. Otherwise, you may find water settling in the roundabout in the center. We did what we had to do, and there are competent engineers within government, within MTW, who did their studies. And I am happy. I am happy. But I want to go further because the Turnpike Junction is a challenge. That's the center of Buckley Factory, an iconic factory in this country. We are now twinning Constant and Carmichael Plantation with Shelter Island in the US. Some of the first slaves who came to this country worked at Constant and Carmichael, and that's where Buckley Factory is. I will speak to that later. But I am comfortable, Mr. Speaker, people of St. George, that this government will look after the roads infrastructure in my constituency. And you have asked me to raise it, and you have asked me to speak on it, and you send me here, and I am obliged to the people of St. George South in this lower chamber. Now, Mr. Speaker, I move on. You know, many young men and women in the constituency, they've completed their education and training and are ready to contribute to the development of this country. And I said earlier what they need are opportunities. Opportunities in emerging industries, we heard in the budget, the emerging industries, the new frontiers that are being pushed. Opportunities in entrepreneurship and in small business, and opportunities through training and apprenticeship programs. They are all outlined in the budget, but I don't want to spend the time going through every aspect of the budgetary proposals. So I therefore welcome the budgetary initiatives that seek to support job creation, encourage small business development and strengthen the capacity of our workforce. And unemployment now is at its lowest, 6.1%. And I want to thank you, the minister, and those persons, the Minister for Infrastructure, the construction sector, the tourism sector. Those are the sectors that led the growth. Agriculture. Those are the three sectors that led the growth. So people were employed. And once you see your economy going, people will be employed. So I thank this government again. But small businesses, Mr. Speaker, are the backbone of local economies. In my constituency, Mr. Speaker, we have barbers, hairdressers, shop attendants, shopkeepers, vendors, mechanics, farmers, and entrepreneurs who have demonstrated remarkable resilience, and they continue to do it every day. These individuals create employment, provide essential services, and keep my community vibrant. It is therefore essential, Mr. Speaker, that we continue to support small businesses through access to financing, training, the financial literacy training, the member for St. James Central, and to reduce administrative barriers. So the budgetary proposals highlight the investment in small business, and I would mention a few, because dear to me, Mr. Speaker, and members of this Lord Chamber, is the Trust Loan Trust Fund Limited. That started under yours truly, and at January, Mr. Speaker, we had spent some $27.9 million, and we've started some 5,703 businesses. Small business owners who are looking to expand their businesses, enhance credit history, and grow their businesses, Mr. Speaker, look to this trust fund loan scheme. And Mr. Speaker, we have now increased the loan limit to $20,000 up from $10,000. I'm impressed with this, Mr. Speaker. This is the engine room for growth in the local economy. You know, it is often said that the United States economy during world recession, and the member for Christchurch West and I, we talk about this, remain buoyant longer than most economies because of the small business sector. And we have to do what we have to do to keep this sector buoyant and to keep this sector thriving. But I wish to share with the people of St. George that during this time, between 2018 to present, we started out of those 5,703 businesses, 243 businesses were started in St. Georgetown, business starts. And I want to thank the member for St. James Central. You know, you shouldn't thank yourself, but I want to thank him. The leader of government business in the upper chamber, I want to thank her as well, because she carried on from where we left off. And indeed, from October the 1st, VAT registration threshold in this budget for small businesses will increase from 200,000 to 350,000. That means a lot to these small businesses. The legal framework, Mr. Speaker, for the collateral registry will allow more businesses with fixed assets greater access to finance. I heard the member for St. James Central, you know, he beats his chest with this collateral registry, but I want him to know that the first paper that went to cabinet was done by yours truly on the collateral registry. I have to set the record straight in this chamber. While he has done the majority of the work, I have piloted the first paper as Minister of Commerce and Small Business Development. But I won't take anything away from him, because I look to him for guidance, and he has truly been a strong supporter and a mentor when I came to this chamber. The Minister of Finance, member for St. Michael for Christchurch East Central, will establish a factoring facility to capitalize $3 million to provide small businesses with greater access to working capital. Factoring facility, some persons may hear factoring facility and talk about a factory. It is not a factory. And it's always good to explain these terms, member for Christchurch East Central. The factoring facility, Mr. Speaker, is a type of business where a company sells unpaid invoices to a third party called a factor. and in exchange for that, you get cash. Instead of waiting for the 60 or 90 days, Mr. Speaker, for the customer to pay, a business get 60 to 90% of that cash up front from the factor. And the factor then collects his money from the customer later, and he takes a fee. So it is a business though. And the factor then pays the business balance, less the fee that he collects. I want to congratulate the minister, the member for Christchurch Central on this initiative. The financial literacy program will work hand in hand with these businesses. And indeed, as we increase the threshold for this Trust Fund Limited, you will see a lot more businesses coming on stream. And indeed, we have to ensure that the financial literacy program and its framework can support these businesses. And I urge that we keep a look at it, stay focused on this. Because very often we know this. Persons start a business and the business fails because of the lack of financial knowledge, the know-how, how to create their balance sheet, profit and loss, manage the cash flow. And that's because we were not schooled in it. We were taught to go to school, get an education, and go and work for somebody. And that's not how other industrialized countries operate. You are schooled to come out of university or secondary school and start your business. So we can't blame those persons in Ellerton and in Thraxall and in Greens who don't know how to run a business. This government has provided the necessary support so that these businesses can indeed thrive and remain buoyant and assist this local economy. Mr. Speaker, another issue frequently raised by the residents is the matter of community safety and security. Crime, even when it occurs in a small number, can create fear and uncertainty among residents. People want to feel safe in their homes. They want their children to leave home and go and play on the fields. They want them to walk to school in comfort. They want them to participate in community activity. I heard a member for St. Philip North mention her daughter not wanting to go to Gold Cup. So addressing crime requires a balance. I heard they talk about the court. I'm not going there. My focus is on community safety. It requires effective policing, yes. But we have to go further. It requires strong communities, youth engagement, education, and opportunities that steer young people away from negative influence. In my constituency, Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud. I have seen firsthand how community programs, sporting initiatives, and youth development activities transform lives. When young people feel supported and valued, they are far less likely to get involved in criminal activity. And I will mention one based on time, and as a former Minister of Tourism said, based on the efflux of time, I have to hasten my presentation. I want to thank the Ministry of Youth. I have a youth commissioner who worked tirelessly. She has now moved on. I hate to call names, but Alicia Catwell. She started a project called a Best Man Project, the best I can be, in March 2024 at the Ellerton Community Center. She took 15 young men between ages of 11 and 17 and started this project. Today, this program has 30 young men, boys ages to 11, 18. They're exposed to life skills sessions, cultural training, stilt walking, counseling, boxing, partnerships with the BDF, juvenile liaison scheme, prison services, and they're working with 2 churches. Mr. Speaker, this is what we need to do. And the programs include boys from Dash Valley, South District, Ellerton, Greens, even from St. George North and Salters, we have a young man. And Mr. Speaker, this is critical. I am impressed with the $5 million grant that will be given to the churches. It's $5 million? I'm impressed with that because you heard me mention churches here. We are a product of our environment. Last night I went to church, a revival, and I felt so good after, refreshed after. Last night, yes, I did. I went to church.
I'm surprised you don't remember.
That's That's okay. That's okay. Good church, boy. But Mr. Speaker, my home church is Ellerton Wesleyan. But I can tell you that every single pastor in St. George South knows me. I go to churches every Sunday because I can't do this alone. I'm very spiritual. I don't believe I can come and represent and go through what I went through as a member of parliament, all on my own, or with all of you, the 29 of you. I think God helped me through the challenges that I was faced with, and I will continue to press on and ask Him for guidance. Every morning, sir, Speaker, I have a biblical verse that I read, and it comes up on my phone. I don't bring up Jacure, even though I reference Jacure. I bring up a biblical verse every morning. But Mr. Speaker, let me move on, because one of the measures that I mentioned in the Well of Parliament that can assist us in creating safe communities. And these measures are in the budget, and I'm happy to see, I didn't look in the budget then, the CCTV security cameras. I mentioned in the Well of Parliament to the Minister of Sports that all sporting facilities and community centers should have CCTV cameras. Why? The member for St. Philip North mentioned it. People feel safer when they go to these facilities and you have cameras, because any inappropriate behavior can be picked up. And I'm happy that we have started the process, but we need to make our communities safe. So I wish to highlight that as one of the measures that I believe we need to improve upon. The importance of continued investment in community facilities and program. Community centers, recreational spaces, and sporting facilities, they serve as vital gathering places where residents can connect, organize activities, and build stronger neighborhoods. So, Mr. Speaker, those are some of the areas. But I want to move on to energy. I'll skip cost of living because time is upon me. Mr. Speaker, Jacure's song again, these are some serious times, spoke about political instability, the geopolitical challenges, war. War is a geopolitical issue. All geopolitical issues are not war. Remember that. You may have political instability, like what we are saying right now. There's no war in Venezuela, really. There's no war in Cuba. But there's war in Iran. The global oil prices have soared internationally by a massive increase, 66%, as a result of the war in Iran. Crude oil prices moved from $64 a barrel to $106 a barrel, and they're projected to even go higher. But Mr. Speaker, this is where it gets interesting. And this is where I will talk about the elephant in the room. Despite the efforts taken in this budget to mitigate against the rising fuel prices, the extension of excise tax and VAT holidays on electric vehicles, and I can call some of them the reduction in excise tax on gasoline and diesel by 10 cents for 3 months in each area, VAT collected on gasoline capped at 47 cents and diesel on 37 cents from April 1st, 2026 to March, and the absorption of the 50% of increase in the fuel clause adjustment on electric bills above the March 2026 bill floor clause adjustments for the next 3 months. The elephant in the room, Mr. Speaker, is whether we can afford to continue these wonderful short-term measures that have elements of risk exposures, or should we focus on protection by pushing RE investment? That's the elephant in the room, Mr. Speaker. This government, and I credit this government for putting in place a long-term hedge against rising oil prices and fossil fuel prices over the past 6 years. But investment in renewable energy offers protection while we hope to secure lower, stable global oil prices. That is the continued risk exposure. Since coming to office, Mr. Speaker, over the past 6 years, there's been an increase in the number of renewable energy systems licensed to go on the electric grid. Actually, Mr. Speaker, my research, and a former cabinet minister, I have some of these information, that hasn't changed much, shows that 135 megawatts of licensed systems interconnect with the renewable energy storage that are yet to be installed on the grid. That's the elephant in the room, you know. And I will list some of them. 50 megawatts of battery storage approved with tariff and rates by FTC since the 1st of April 2025. 15 megawatts of battery storage approved for Barbados Light and Power to install on the grid, which they can now proceed with given that their licenses have been approved. So they can go and access finance for the project. Where are we with that? 60 megawatts of battery energy storage system BESS. We know about that. There's probably one of the last cabinet papers that I read. Going through the procurement process currently, with RFPs set to be completed by April of this month and awarded by the first quarter of 2027. I go on to Lambert's Wind Farm project. That presents another 30 megawatts of renewable wind capacity. And this is going through the procurement process as well. Just listen. Green hydrogen project. This presents another 50 megawatts of PV generating capacity. These are all known by you all. And 120 megawatts of battery and hydrogen storage capacity. The most important aspect of this is that this project represents 6% of the island total energy demand of foreign renewable energy power. 6%. This is the elephant in the room. Protection versus risk exposure. So in the next 30 months, Mr. Speaker, Barbados will be close to having, once we execute these projects, 50% of energy demand generated from renewable energy. This is more sustainable hedge against what we are seeing now. What we are seeing now is a reaction to energy crisis caused by rising global oil prices and war. This government, though, has been mitigating, and the evidence is there over the last 6 years. But RE investment on island offers price shock protection. So we are protected against price shocks. While we are hoping to secure stable or low price oil prices, that is a continued risk exposure, and I continue to say that, Mr. Speaker. I know the member for Christchurch East Central, he knows this. I piloted, Mr. Speaker, the bill in this lower chamber back in 2021, I think it was, to amend the FTC Act to address renewable energy players in the market and to set rates for renewable energy producers. Where are we today, Mr. Speaker? Today, I am unsure if there exists a comprehensive framework for the licensing application. We require FTC, Mr. Speaker, to be more nimble and timely in decision-making process. The lack of the regulatory timelines, in addition to delayed decision-making, this impacts large-scale investment in renewable energy sector. That's the elephant in the room. So there needs to be a shift in culture at FTC. Engaging outside of your formal statutory duty to consult does not mean that there's a dilution or dereliction of FTC's independence. Consult. We're dragging our foot in this area. They must set timelines to help government address this major crisis. And along those lines, Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, the battery storage, FTC is yet to approve the terms of interconnection agreement of BLMP with what I just mentioned, the battery storage system. FTC needs to direct BLMP to submit draft interconnection agreement to FTC for them to approve, to give effect to the 50 megawatts energy storage tariff decision that was made since 2025. They have not done that. So, Mr. Speaker, you see where the elephant in the room is. The member for Christchurch Central and the team, they're going to have to come back here again with these risk exposures, trying to hedge for 3 months while we have the protection sitting here. We have the protection sitting here, people. There must be more cooperation and a greater push and decision-making, timely decision-making, to get these capacity, the 135 megawatt capacity of storage on the grid. But, Mr. Speaker, I stand proudly and I associate myself with these budgetary proposals. But I want to caution, though, Mr. Speaker, that there are some major areas to be addressed, and I just list some. And I will go back to being a bit parochial as I am, because I see the member,
Well, you see the speaker looking.
the speaker looking
Right.
here.
You have
Mr.
good vision.
Speaker.
You have good vision.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, the continuous disruption of water supply in areas in my constituency is a concern. While I don't want to go there, I know there are persons who refuse to leave their homes on the 11th of February because of major disruption of water. So while we're talking about fixing the water supply, and I said from the front bench, don't only go to St. Lucie. I heard the member for St. Joseph got up and he beat his chest about solve the water problems that are solved in St. Joseph. I'm happy. I want to beat my chest too. The areas of Mount Gardens, Ellerton Gardens, Fairview, Meadowview Heights, Melverton, Ellerton, major and continuous water disruption. People can't go to work. This is a problem. I have mentioned this before. Drainage issues, Mr. Speaker. I've traveled for the past 5 years. I don't think I have the energy to go anymore. Driving boat with Drainage Division, showing them the drainage in South District. Driving boat with Drainage Division, showing them the drainage in Drexel Hope. Driving boat with Drainage Division, showing them drainage all over St. George. And even going into other areas and showing them in St. George North where the issues are. Not one has been fixed. Mr. Speaker, the elephant in the room, efficiencies as well. We can come in here with the budgetary proposals, but we have to get these basic matters solved. Street lights along deadly roads. Boarded Hall, a young girl got off of a bus around 7 o'clock. The member for St. Philip North, he knows that. In Valley Vista, lost her life. The entire stretch coming from Boarded Hall going to the proposed roundabout. No lights. I am hoping that the solar lights, the first order of the day, member for St. Michael South, is to get some solar lights on that road coming from Boarded Hall straight to 6 Roads. And I know the area, the member for St. Philip North and the member for the city travel there. The member for St. Philip South. And Mr. Speaker, I heard the member for St. James North, my good friend, and I support the breakfast program coming to the primary schools. I started a breakfast program last year, Mr. Speaker, in my constituency because the chief educational officer, yes, I'm going to wrap up now, but let me just make this one point. The chief educational officer, thank you, Mr. Speaker, said in a social partnership meeting, she witnessed a young boy engaging in a fight because someone mashed his toes. And when they dive into the reason why he punched the guy, he was hungry. He didn't have breakfast. We have started the breakfast program at primary schools. But guess what? My breakfast program caters to 35 students. 20 are primary and 15 are secondary. I still have to cater to the secondary. While it is a start and I support it, I'm calling on the private sector to join us in assisting with these programs. The member for Christchurch East Central can't do all. He ain't got money to do everything. And I'm happy that we have started these breakfast programs at the primary level, but the secondary students in first and second form too, they're hungry too on mornings. So I can't stop my program only for the primary. I have to carry on for the secondary. And I will find 15 more secondary students to replace the primary students that now will be part of the government's program. Because that's my mission. The people of St. George sent me here. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I was sent a message and asked to be passed on to the member for Christchurch East Central. And the message reads like this. I'm impressed with the budget, but I need my refund for the corporate income tax that I've been waiting for 4 years. There's also an overpayment of the pandemic levy. Tell BRA to pay me my money, the Barbados Revenue Authority. Everybody don't want a loan. There are some other issues that we need to address. And Mr. Speaker, I took the member for Christchurch East Central in Harmony Estate during the campaign. We walk hand in hand all the time. A constituent of mine, thanks for the vote, sir, for reposing the confidence in me. And these people are asking for the first time homeowners grant. And you promised them, and they called me and they said, I want to hear your voice in Parliament, representing us for the first time homeowners grant. And I have done such. I rest my case there. I'll continue, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member. Trevor Prescott, you all remember it was in Michael East and his plane. This land, let yours land.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker.
Let yours land.
Yeah, I will land. Mr. Speaker, we all share, the members of this, as I end, we share a common responsibility to ensure that the decisions we make today create a better future for generations that follow. Let us therefore continue to work together, guided by the interests of the people we serve, to build a stronger, safer, and more prosperous nation. I am thankful for the opportunity to contribute to this Appropriation Bill 2026. With those words, I'm obliged.
Honourable for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me start, Mr. Speaker, as is customary, to thank the people who sent me here. And it's customary to do that, Mr. Speaker, because we have to always remember in whose shoes we are here to serve. The people of Christchurch West, Mr. Speaker, have now sent me to this Honourable Chamber on 5 not consecutive, but 5 times. And that has given me the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to present in this Honourable Chamber, I think this is my 17th budget presentation. So I want to thank all of them that voted for me, all of them that did not vote for me, and all of them that did not vote at all. Because, Mr. Speaker, when you become the Member of Parliament, you represent everybody in the constituency. And you have to always remember that. So from Sergeant's Village to Blue Waters, to Navy Gardens, to Bonnets, to Fours Roads, to Simmons Land, to Clapham, Rockley, St. Matthias, and all across the constituency of Christchurch West. But I also want to thank my campaign team, because in a similar vein I could not have done it without the campaign team that was there to support me. And I think we feel in this way for this particular budget because it's one of those few times when a budget follows immediately after a general election. And I didn't ask your permission to give her a name, but I want to single out my campaign manager, Ms. Sophia Husbands. And the reason I want to single her out and thank her for the tremendous work that she did in the campaign is because this was her first campaign as a campaign manager. And she rose to the occasion. And I can't think of her without thinking of the previous campaign manager that I had for so many years. One gentleman who's now passed, Mr. Renewable Grant, who was with me from 2003. But before that, he was with Sir Henry Ford from 1971. And to those who may not know, and I'm going to say it now to the people of Barbados, Renewable Grant won more campaign elections than anybody in the history of this country, dead or alive. From 1971 to 1976 to 1981 to 1986, 1991, 2003, 2008, 2013, 2018, 2022, Renewable Grant won every single election. A tremendous achievement by one person in one constituency. So my new campaign manager, Sophia Husbands, had some big shoes to fill. Like I had big shoes to fill when I became the Member of Parliament for Christchurch West after succeeding Sir Henry Ford. And I want to speak a little bit about that, Mr. Speaker, because this budget presentation, more than any other, weighed very heavily on my heart. It weighed heavily on my heart, Mr. Speaker, because after coming to this honourable chamber for 5 times, after having been here for 17, 18 budget presentations, you come to the realization that you have to add something. You can't just go through and talk about, yes, the presentation and how it was good and how it impacts your constituents. You also see it as important that you find some way to pass on some knowledge, some pearl to those that follow you. You know, Mr. Speaker, when I became a dentist and then an oral surgeon, both times we had to take the Hippocratic Oath. As the honourable member next to me would have taken the Hippocratic Oath. And in that oath, it says that you hold the knowledge that was given to you in trust to then pass that knowledge on to those who follow you. And I've been a fortunate person, Mr. Speaker, because I've had some really, really good mentors. I had an excellent mentor in Oystein Frederick Wheel, who mentored me as an oral surgeon and taught me how to manage difficult cases, taught me how to manage difficult situations, but be cool and be calm about it. But above all, to stand up on principles. And maybe he taught me too good, because I am very much a principled person. And you know, I have heard many times that principles only mean something when it's inconvenient to stand by them. But sometimes, if you don't stand up for something, you're going to fall for everything. So I am very much a principled person. And I make a decision, or I made a decision, to stand on a principle. That's the first thing. I had a very good mentor in construction, and a man called Mr. Arthur Bostic. He's one of the few mentors that are still alive. Taught me all the intricacies of building a commercial building, building a house, all the stages that you have to go through. What is the importance of the engineering? How the pouring of the concrete is the most important part, because if you don't get the concrete right, the building will fall. I had a good mentor in him, and I can't forget that. And of course, I had a good mentor in Sir Henry Ford, who not only taught me how to be a good representative, but he also taught me how to listen to the people, understand what the people are asking for, and try your best, try to get things done for the people of your constituency. And that's what we try to do each and every day. So this weighed very heavy on me, Mr. Speaker, because I see myself, after this long time in this honourable chamber, now moving into that kind of mentorship role as well. To be able to encourage all of those who follow us. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, I listened, and I come here, and I came from the beginning, and I listened to every single member of Parliament who has spoken before. And let me tell you, the future of Barbados is in good hands with the members of the Barbados Parliament. I listened very carefully. And they might say that, you know, they get a little WhatsApp with a pointer here and there. I tell them, oh, you know, I might give them a little hand gesture, your volume a little loud, come bring down a little bit. Or you're speaking a little too fast, slow it down. And I understand that, because nobody is born a good orator. You have to be channeled, you have to be taught certain things. You cannot obviously assess yourself immediately. People have you need that help to assess you, including me. And I think that is the kind of role that I have moved into. And it is unsettling, because does it mean that I'm getting on age? I don't feel so. I feel I'm still young. I enjoy the feeling that I'm young. But for somebody tell me young as the... Let me not go right into that. But it is the experience that I bring. The experience in being a good member of Parliament, the experience in being a good oral surgeon, the experience in being a good contractor, the experience in understanding people and understanding what you have to do to respect people. And you know, that's the fundamental thing. You know, I haven't gotten to my notes yet about the budget. And I got a lot. I got a lot of notes. But respecting and understanding people, respecting and understanding not only your colleagues, but also the people that you work with in the various ministries or departments or whatever, and understanding that everybody has a role and you can learn from anybody. And you have to always remember that, you know, sometimes people get into positions and think they can't learn because I've arrived, you know, I'm this and that and so on. That don't work. You know, Mr. Speaker, I was managing a small little shop when I was 14 years old. 14. My parents could go away and I could manage the little shop. I didn't have a driver's license yet. I used to get my bicycle and ride to the bank. It was at Pandora's, now Bayside, to do a deposit. I was 14, but my parents could go away and I could manage. I had people, the cashiers and the porters and the drivers, and I could manage the shop. But at that time, I thought that being strong and being tough and saying, you do this because I'm the manager and this kind of situation, I thought that that was the way. But I soon learned that that is not the way. It is not, this is not the way. Confrontation is not the way. And I got into a confrontation with one of the cashiers, and when my parents came back, I explained it to my mother. My mother said, son, in life, you have to grease the wheel. I never ever forgot it. In life, you have to grease the wheel. Some people feel that this could work. But you know what? This works better. Join with me. Come with me. Let us move to a particular destination. Let us go in that way together. And you know, that is a good segue for me to start where the budget is. Because this budget is about the Barbados Labour Party telling the people of Barbados, come with me. This budget is about saying we have set a destination. And once we work together between the policymakers and the population, working together to arrive at that destination, then we all will benefit. So I want to support these measures. I want to support them wholeheartedly. And all of them, as the Honourable Member for St. Philip North said, all of them, every single one, excellent measure. But I had to ask myself, if I am seeing myself as a mentor, I need to add a little more than the average person. I need to level up, as those who are gamers would understand. You know, I'm very much a gamer. I think it improves your manual dexterity. I think it keeps your brain active. And I think there are significant benefits for being a gamer. But that's by the by. What can I add? And I tossed and I thought, and this is why it troubled me. What can I add that the new Member of Parliament can take away as a pearl? What can I add that the people of Barbados can say, yes, that was forward thinking? What can I add that people can say, yes, I learned something new that I didn't know before? All of those things. And I tossed and I turned and I even looked back to my experiences in here. And I looked at what would be best to add. And the first thing I came to was this concept about the traffic. You know, Mr. Speaker, when I was at this same very station, number 9, coming from the top, I believe it is, when the then Prime Minister of Barbados fired the people that were to do the flyovers from the floor of Parliament. And I sat back and said, my gosh, where would we be as a country now if the flyovers had been allowed to continue? You know how much in terms of energy, how much in terms of time, how much in terms of effort the people of this country have lost because of traffic congestion across Barbados? It comes to a situation now, Mr. Speaker, that you have to plan your day based on traffic times. People have to get up at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning from St. Philip just to be able to get to town in time because of the traffic congestion. You know, and it took me back to when they were first doing the ABC Highway and how there was all sorts of hoo-ha about the ABC Highway. It was then the Industrial Access Road and all the problems that it would bring, and it was unnecessary and all that. Where would we be now without the ABC Highway? Where would we be now? But the same thing applies to the flyovers. And I look forward to it when we can see the reduction in traffic. And if that, I'm not saying that is the be-all and end-all, but that's an important plank in solving the traffic problem. There are other parts to it. And more important than now, than ever. Because this is a time now when the cost of fuel is higher than normal and anticipated to increase. So traffic is a problem. And it took me back to the time when I was the Minister of Transport, and we set about finding where are the biggest problem junctions that cause problems in terms of accidents and lives. Looking to see how we can improve them. And one by one, we looked to improve the traffic junctions. We started with the traffic lights on Highway 2A because it costs lives. We looked at Rendezvous because it costs people's mobility. We looked at the Garfield Sobers roundabout because it costs time. And looked to improve. And this is what we need to do. Look for the problem. Find out what the problem is and then find solutions. And at the end of the day, that is what this government is about. Finding solutions to problems. Problems that face the country. Because that's why we were elected. You know, one time I was canvassing, I think it was in St. Matthias. And this lady told me, I was telling her, you know, things was difficult, we're having to do this, and we're having to do that, and time and so on. I said, youngster, I don't want to hear all of that. We put you there to solve those problems. So get on with the job. And we expect that you will do the job to your best ability. And I always remember that. Isn't everybody in your constituency that want to know about debt to GDP? That want to understand about climate swap? That want to understand about all these various things across the financial institutions? They want to know that you are there doing the job they put you to do. And that's the significance about it. And I always remember it. So when we get in here and we talk about debt to GDP, which is good, and we have to look at these things, but we have to understand that that is our job. That is our job making Barbados better. That is our job that those people sent us here to do. To find solutions. And the ABC Highway was a solution. The flyovers, another solution. And it was sad that the then Prime Minister fired them, because I think we could have been much, much further as a country if he had not taken that decision. But unfortunately, we live by the decisions of our leaders. Another thing that I thought that we had to address was energy. And it's important that we address energy, and the member for St. James Central started the discussion on energy. Energy is important because, not only because of the increase in price, because energy drives an economy. And we have to be cognizant as to the cost of energy fuel prices. And we have to start to look and get ourselves appreciating and understanding conserving energy is important. And what we now need is a national energy conservation program. That is what we need. And I believe that that National Energy Conservation Program can move, and it will withstand the war and go past the war. Like COVID, we learned things from COVID that have benefited us after COVID. The Zoom meetings, which of course have benefited people across the world. You know, I'm sure somebody said, don't ever waste a crisis. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. So if we have now an energy issue, and we can get out of that, people doing energy audits of their homes to see how they can get better fuel-efficient bulbs, how you encourage people to turn off the lights when you're not using them, how we could get more efficient air conditioning systems, how we can improve ventilation for houses, how we can design houses better. And not only in homes, but every government department needs to do an energy audit. Every school needs to look at how it's using energy. Because if we all cumulatively work together to save energy in this country, then the energy fuel bill will be less for everybody. And that will be a benefit for us as a nation. You know, I mentioned it in the estimates. And I didn't get much traction then, but I'm glad to hear more people are talking about it now. That you can have differential metering when you're using electricity. So you can have a peak rate and an off-peak rate. And this is, now I do appreciate that sometimes the meters or the meters may have to be changed. But I spoke about it from the NPC, from the natural gas point of view, and they told me that they do it for commercial. And it's not only electricity, differential metering for electricity, differential metering for natural gas, even differential metering for water as well. Because what you're doing is you're giving differential tariffs and what we call peak shaving, allowing it to have a more consistent utilization and making it easier for them to plan as a utility across this country. These are the kinds of ideas that we need to be looking at. These are the kinds of things that are important. And let me go further, Mr. Speaker. Energy conservation is not only about the electricity. Energy conservation is about water. And a lot of people miss that. Because every single ounce, every single gallon of water that comes to your house has to be pumped. And the Barbados Water Authority is the largest user of electricity in Barbados. And you know, when I worked as the Senior Minister for Infrastructure, we worked tediously to be able to put a whole photovoltaic system out in the Bell, to be able to build resilience for the Water Authority. But we were thinking hurricanes. We were thinking that if a hurricane took out a generator, that the Water Authority would have a PV system with batteries that could give that resilience. We weren't thinking oil crisis. But even now, more than ever, having a PV system for the Water Authority gives resilience even for oil crisis. Because it means rather than relying on imported fuel to pump water, and water is life, rather than relying on imported fuel to pump water, we can rely on the sun to give the photovoltaic energy so water can be pumped across this country. So therefore, I'm not suggesting only an energy audit all across Barbados so we can conserve energy. I'm suggesting a water audit too, so that every toilet that leaking is fixed. When you're brushing your teeth, turn off the water in between. Don't wash your car all the time with the hose, use the bucket sometimes. Get in a leak detector around the house, especially when you see spikes in your bill. Getting the Water Authority to complete what it was doing in terms of reducing non-revenue water. All of these things will help. All of these things will reduce the amount of fuel that we have to import into this country at the high prices that we otherwise will be paying. These issues are important, Mr. Speaker. But in addition to that, and I go back to my idea of giving some new ideas and some mentoring. Some may not have heard of it, some may not have heard of it. But there's a very well-known index, Mr. Speaker, called the Misery Index. I don't know if you've ever heard it, I imagine you have. Misery Index, Mr. Speaker, is the joining together of inflation and unemployment. And I want to say that this Barbados Labour Party has reduced the misery index of this country to unprecedented levels. Unprecedented levels. And I was able to print off a graph. You know, I like my graphs. I like my presentations. The misery index for 20 years is here. And you gotta, you know, by not having
Making it a document, the House.
of course, Mr. Speaker. Of course, easily. The misery index, Mr. Speaker, gives an idea of how the people are experiencing life. And this misery index shows very clearly, and you've got to remember, a budget speech is also a political speech. A lot of people sometimes, by not having an opposition, and we think sometimes it's not political, but remember, the people of Barbados are listening to us as well. A misery index under the previous administration used to hover at around 12 to 14%. It used to be 8 and 10 and 12% unemployment, and the rest was inflation, sometimes 14. And that's what it shows clearly. Now, we had a spike in the misery index at COVID, and that's what that spike is there. But for the first time in the last 20 years, the misery index of Barbados is now at 7%. The lowest it has been in 20 years. Let me see if I can get the right thing right here. The lowest it has been, Mr. Speaker. And it is low because of the unemployment number, and it is low because of the inflation number. And what does that say? That says that the Barbados Labour Party has been doing what they've been elected to do. Somebody is telling me, do good and good shall attend you. I don't normally use that in this honourable chamber. I leave that for the political platform. But, Mr. Speaker, that is exactly what we were elected to do, to reduce the hardships of the people of this country. And this is why I support the budget. This is why I support the honourable member who presented it from Christchurch East Central. Not because he's part of my Christchurch team, not because he's done a fantastic job in the second presentation, but because he was able to bring all the policies together to do what? Get growth in this country. And that is why we see the number of people working around Barbados that we see now. Because we have looked to grow ourselves out of a problem. The previous administration tried to print money and print themselves out of a problem. But it proves that you cannot do that. And although I see a member here who was a member of that administration, and he understands well the policy and the errors, the error in there is. And I want to make it clear, and I did tell the honourable member who was part of the administration, I was going to say this in public, and he did give me permission to say it. We came into this honourable chamber together. The member for the city of Bridgetown and myself, and the member of St. James, so quite a few of them. We came into this chamber together. And I remember it like yesterday. The current member for the city of Bridgetown, then he was the member for St. Philip North, told me he wanted to be a member of the Barbados Labour Party. I am telling you, as John 3:16, if I tell him a lie, let him get up and say so now. That's what he told me. He wanted to be a member of the Barbados Labour Party. But there was a man by the name of Cappy Greenwich who was the holder of that seat. And he couldn't get past that obstacle. So he had no choice. He had to go and join the second-rate people, the other side. And he was successful there. And he unseated the obstacle. But now, as luck would have it, he then get unseated by the lady to my left. So he had now another problem, which was to find a new position to run in to achieve his original objective to be a member of the Barbados Labour Party. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, he has achieved that objective, and we are happy to have him. Because it goes back to my original thesis. You can learn from anybody, and it is better to let us join forces and solve a problem than let us butt heads and end up with bloody foreheads and blood in our eyes. That is not the way. The way is to join forces, work together, and achieve the objective that everybody wants of reducing the misery that our people endure across this country. So this budget is about putting more money in people's pockets. This budget is about seeking growth, about expanding the capital works. And I in particular, and I'm going to wrap up soon, but I in particular like the GIGA, the industrial expansion across Barbados, across the region, because that is a growth part of our economy that we have not paid enough attention to. Industrialization, getting opportunities for industries to flourish, getting foreign direct investment, not only in hotels, but also in industry. And if we can work to make industry better, if we can work to expand industrial improvements and to get what we expect in terms of data centers, in terms of people doing intravenous fluids that we've been working on, in terms of people doing biofuels, all of those things can help Barbadians do better, can add more to growth, and by reducing unemployment even further, will reduce that misery index even further. And that's what we're here to do. Yes, we're political, but once the election is done, we get to work. And work we will, and work we shall, and work we have done, and we can continue to do it. Mr. Speaker, health is the most important thing. Without health, you have nothing. And I've been feeling very healthy these days. I feel I got 2 more elections in me now. And I am buoyed. I'm ready to take on anytime. 2 more elections I think I can handle easy. But Mr. Speaker, I am there not only to support and to make sure that I give the best representation to the people of Christchurch West, but I also have a role to help those that have followed me, to mentor those, and not only on the back bench, those on the front bench, so I'm mentoring them too. Not only in terms of improving their health, but also in terms of policy, getting their policies right. And that's what we're here for, because we cannot forget reducing the misery that the people of Barbados endure. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I really felt very energized by the presentation from the member for Christchurch West, and I'm happy that you have a few more elections in you. We look forward to your presence. I just want to start, Mr. Speaker, by expressing my thanks to the good people of St. James South, who have expressed again their confidence and trust in me to represent them in this honourable chamber. And I want to thank the team that worked so assiduously with me during the campaign to ensure that we were able to make presentations to our people about the performance of the Barbados Labour Party, the benefits that we had been able to bring, as well as the things we were able to do together as a team. And I value that partnership because we were able to do a number of things to improve their lives. But this particular budget, and I want to sincerely thank the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, it really is a wonderful budget, and it represents the heart and soul of the Barbados Labour Party, a focus on people, a focus on their needs, and ensuring that we are able to do something for everybody, from working class people to middle class, the people who are challenged, business people, small businesses. And I want to sincerely thank the finance team and the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast for the leadership on this matter. I have a few thank yous to report on from St. James South. And I want to start by saying that we have worked assiduously to be able to increase the ability of our pensioners to be able to manage the challenges of the cost of living. And therefore, the program such as Ask Delia is a tremendous help to them. But within this budget, the provision of the $1,200 per annum for pensioners, for people who are physically challenged, for people who are on welfare, this is very welcome, and they asked me to express thanks for this. As a community, we have worked tremendously on trying to help our children to improve their reading, because this was negatively affected in the COVID period, and therefore the work by the Honourable Member for St. James North, one in terms of the aim to ensure that by 7 all children can read well as that school breakfast program. Believe me, we are deeply thankful for those provisions in this particular budget. Of particular interest, we had a meeting just recently where we were looking at security for the St. James South residents, and therefore they were pleased to hear that there's a removal of duties on security cameras, because our 43 neighbourhood watch groups are all looking at how they can use the introduction of cameras to assist them in keeping the community safe, so they deeply appreciate that. And a big thank you I was asked to express for the roads that were done by MTW. The Husbands area and Wanstead Road were done, but the biggest bugbear was the Prior Park Road. And it cost a great deal of money, and it took a great deal of time. But the residents are pleased and asked me to share in this honourable chamber the thanks to the DPM and the Ministry of Transport and Works for the excellent work. They're very pleased with that particular road, and they're looking forward to the new Minister of Transport and Works working on the Wanstead Terrace roads. Or seniors and pensioners who live in that area are in dire need. There are a few things that we need to sort out though and fix as a government, and to work on improving, to improve the lives of people. And yes, to reduce the misery index, because it's not only the inflation and so on that creates misery, it's when we don't get the little things done. And one of the things I would like us to have top of mind and to bring reform, the deconstruct and reconstruct so that we can do better, is to be able to deal with the, to put on a very vigorous environmental program to remove a lot of the derelict vehicles that are in neighborhoods causing rodent problems. They're unsightly and they diminish the neighborhoods. We need better and more frequent and consistent debushing and tree removal. Tree removal has been very difficult, and every year the people in St. James South are struggling with the fear of a large tree coming down, injuring their homes and possibly injuring them. And I'm trusting that the Ministry of Transport and Works and the other entities that work on these matters will be able to help us get this done. Now, I am particularly pleased that the Honourable Member for St. Michael West will be honouring a promise made to the good people in St. James South, and that is to have the erection of a number of housing units in the Oxnard-Haynesville area. They have waited patiently, And this is because we had to keep building the economy, keep building the revenues, and in order for the government to have the wherewithal to be able to provide that housing. And I also want to admonish and remind the wonderful minister who represents St. John, who is in charge of community development and sports, that our community is crying out for a community resource center, and he has promised me in the Well of Parliament that this is on his list for this year, along with our exercise equipment. I will remind him in his ear at lunchtime later, in case he's not hearing me at the moment. So we're very grateful for what has been done, and we trust that we will be able to see some of the niggling issues that will further impact the misery index managed in this coming year. Now, the good people of St. James South, there are over 10,400 of them, along with the rest of Barbados, we really stand together at a moment of great change. And for me, I have the privilege to facilitate and work with a team to help transition our country to a changing world by being able to look at the upgrading of their skills that will be essential to them for continuing the journey of their life. So I want to switch now and speak to the present, to the work, vision, and the national mission of the Ministry of Technological and Vocational Training. It really was designed to empower every Barbadian to earn by learning and to be able to excel. And what this will do, it will help us to be globally competitive. Our ministry is absolutely essential to the ecosystem necessary for the transformation of Barbados, to make us future ready and to create a socially cohesive nation. But the hour is urgent, and the ministry must be provisioned, and in the estimates we saw excellent provision, 230 million, to help us fulfill the mandate. But what is the purpose for the ministry? One, it has to expand equitable access to high-quality training for all. This means that young people in Durance Village, young people in West Terrace, and in Warrens with their dreams need to have access to high-quality training, and it must not be limited because they have limited income. We have to make sure there's access for all. And we have to align our skills development. No longer can we scattershot and just do things without paying attention to whether there's a demand in the labor market for a particular set of skills, and whether or not the skills that we are training for really meet our national development priorities. Therefore, there is going to be a reform of how we approach tertiary education to align with labor market needs and the national development priorities. We want to promote lifelong learning, upskilling and reskilling across all stages of life, because the world now does not allow you to continue to be successful and advance in your life if you're working with information from 5 years ago. You have to keep upgrading your skills to keep pace with the rapid changes taking place in the global economy. And one of the biggest responsibilities we have is to ensure that we so upgrade and change our tertiary education that the quality level is globally acceptable and accredited, so that that student from Husbands, that student from Oxnards can go any part of the world and show their Barbados certificate and know that it is accepted because it is globally accredited. So this mandate for this Ministry of Technological and Vocational Training ensures human development becomes a national growth strategy. And growth is necessary for all of us. What the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central presented to us informed the country that Barbados has seen 18 consecutive quarters of growth, and that this next 19th quarter will also represent growth for us. What has happened in the past is that the Democratic Labour Party has tried to say that GDP growth does not mean anything to the ordinary citizen in the street, the one there on Palmetto Square, that it means nothing to the person in Bank Hall, that it means nothing to the person in Silver Hill. I beg to differ because I know differently. When you say that there's a 2% growth in a 16 billion economy, it means that $320 million more of economic engagement has taken place. Now, who was affected by that $320 million in transactions within the Barbadian economy? It means that the coconut vendor, Mr. Speaker, who does not report how many coconuts he has sold, but who nevertheless takes that money and goes to the supermarket, goes to the pharmacy, looks after his child, and is able to help his mother, and is able to go to the doctor, he helps the economy when he spends. And all of that goes into the gross domestic product. It means that transactions have taken place by ordinary people, and it has resulted in growth. You're talking about a young woman in my constituency who is now relocating her canteen from out of her backyard and seeking to locate it in a commercial spot. As she begins to sell and she begins to buy supplies from the various wholesalers, all of those transactions translates into the gross domestic product. You're talking about the taxis who earn from the tourism industry, where we've had tremendous growth under the leadership of the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central. Those taxi drivers are able to spend money in the village shops. They're able to pay bills. Ladies are able to purchase their beauty services. People are able to go in Swan Street and shop. All of that is gross domestic product. All of that impacts ordinary Barbadians from the top to the bottom. Gross domestic product does not stay in the pockets at the top. It always filters through the economy. And therefore, the growth that we've seen in tourism, the growth we've seen in agriculture, the growth we've seen in financial services, in construction, in the retail sectors, all of those have benefited Barbadians, and the St. James South has been the recipient of some of those benefits because people have had jobs. Now, how are we going to sustain the growth for the future? Because future growth is not guaranteed. Barbados stands at a defining moment. There's shifting global technologies that are reshaping the way how we work. There are greater demands on people, and it's moving faster than we imagine. So therefore, Barbados has to be prepared to be bold and to have a coordinated effort that will help them to be able to adjust to a new world where what is required of you at work has changed. If we do not change, this is going to create a problem for Barbadian families. So someone who has a good paying job now, has a mortgage, or has children in university, and they're not changing their skills, and the organization has to move on because they have to integrate digital technology into their enterprise for greater efficiency, and people cannot make the transition, then that person could find themselves in the midst of having to pay a mortgage, find that they can no longer retain that job, but might be made redundant or severed because they cannot keep pace with change. And that is why the matter of upskilling and reskilling is so important. So what are some of the dynamics that can affect the future growth of Barbados and therefore affect the people of Barbados as they go about their ordinary business as vendors, as farmers, as mechanics, as teachers, as nurses? First of all, you have a number of global shocks and our climate vulnerability. These things now are not occurring every now and again. These things are becoming part of the structure. It's becoming part of the structural framework of what we deal with every day. Barbados has been hit by a number of climatic events. And what this does, it disrupts our ports, the fisheries, it disrupts tourism. And what that does is increase loss across the economy. But it speaks to the need for us to build a labor force that has resilience-oriented skills and who can help us change and build out the infrastructure of tomorrow that will allow us to develop more hurricane-resistant homes, more resilient roads. All of these things are going to be necessary. The IMF in its climate analysis said that Barbados has a high level of vulnerability and confirms the higher hurricane probability will affect us because of global warming by 2040, 2050. And it outlined that this has implications for things like water, energy, agriculture, and our construction. And therefore, Barbados urgently needs to build new skills in managing each of those things. This is what is going to create a future for our young people, regardless of where they are, the ones who are sitting now at SJPI, the ones who are in UE, the ones who are working in a mechanic shop, the ones who are studying online. All of these opportunities are there, but only if this ministry is able to create the transformation to provide the studies in these areas to take Barbados forward. So we have to develop climate smart curricula where we can build back better. So how we build our chattel houses, our wall houses will change. We have to develop agricultural value chains and help young people to engage in agricultural careers that move beyond the hoe and fork and moves to climate smart agriculture using the latest technology. We are preparing people for the green jobs of the future. And this benefits all of us. Digital acceleration and AI are changing the skill requirements for all workers. All workers. In Barbados, we've been fortunate. We have close to 80% penetration of the internet and 123% of mobile use of SIMs. What that means is that there's strong digital reach in Barbados. But employers anticipate that the fastest growth area in terms of jobs and the use of IT technology will come in managing data, will come in operating digital platforms, integrating cloud-based systems into daily operations. In other words, to be able to use the technology beyond entertaining ourselves with games or films or using it simply for shopping, and to be able to utilize these skills to help us improve and increase our efficiency in our organizations. A recent study has shown, Mr. Speaker, that over 63% of employees in our organizations do not have the IT skills necessary to use programs to increase productivity and efficiency. And what does that mean? That the quality of service suffers. It means that labor costs increase. Because if you can't use technology efficiently, you have to add more bodies. And the result of that is that businesses will become uncompetitive, and all of that will constrain the future growth of Barbados. We just heard from the Honourable Member for Christchurch West about the GIGA program, the industrial program by the Ministry of Innovation and Science and Technology, which will look to expand skills that we can go after advanced IT work, whether it is in big data, whether it's in AI and machine learning, automation, advanced manufacturing, and other related roles. What the Ministry of Technological and Vocational Training has to do then is to scale up the digital literacy of all workers. All of us in here will have to improve and increase our digital literacy. So we are looking at how we can help provide more courses in AI, in data, in cyber, how we can offer micro-credentials. Micro-credentials, Mr. Speaker, these are short courses that are targeted to specific skills that enable the individual to actually perform a task better as a result of acquiring it. And some of these are 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. And this allows people, while they're working, to continue to improve their employability and increase their earning because they have higher levels of skill. So in the budget, we have the Enterprise Training Fund and for NTI. Those budgets are going to enable us to advance and accelerate the digital training that is going to be needed for this country. The Enterprise Growth Training Fund has 1.9 million, and the budget for NTI is 7 million, and BCC is 51 million. And these entities are going to be working together in our digital skills upgrade program. This is important. And why is it important? Because the hard work that is being done to attract investment into Barbados, the hard work being done in growing and transforming industry, if we don't have the skill sets, then our economic growth will crash. Look at what has happened in construction. Because of the long economic recession that this country went through, where there were no jobs in construction, a lot of young people did not continue to acquire skills. COVID then stopped a lot of businesses from investing in construction, new hotels, new manufacturing plants, all across the world. With the end of COVID now, what you have now is a rush of construction projects now all over the world. And Barbados has been able to attract quite a few in tourism and in other areas. But the skills are not ready for the construction. That's one of the reasons why we started Construction Gateway. Now, what was the challenge to the government at that point? Do you say to the companies that want to establish businesses that we don't have the labor force, but you have to employ Barbadians? Or do you, recognizing that once they cannot meet their time plan, they're going to shift the location of their construction to another country, another island, and we would lose not only the construction jobs, but the jobs which the actual business would bring. So it meant that we had to allow people to come in from overseas who already have the skills to do the construction while we try to fast track construction skills training in Barbados. And this is what the ministry works on. Now, one of the challenges that we experience in trying to rebuild skills is the brain drain problem that is encountered, where working age and highly skilled people, when they cannot find jobs, move and go elsewhere. And this has resulted in a number of skill gaps in health, in education, and in IT. And the only way we can tackle that is to create local opportunities here in Barbados and create supported pathways for young people in Deacons, young people in Haynesville, young people in Silver Hill, young people in Bank Hall. Give them the skills to be able to get those jobs. So there's an index, the Human Flight and Brain Drain Index, says that Barbados scores at 4.8 out of 10. The lower the score, the lower the drain. We have to make sure that that score does not rise. And we can only do that by the acceleration of creating training access for all Barbadians and giving them recognized credentials that allow them to get decent local jobs. This is going to be important. So part of the group that is very key for us are the ones who are underserved, who've left school without any certificates. And so we're building out a skills access program jointly to be able to provide young people who were not able to get tertiary education, to provide them with that platform. And we're collaborating with the Ministry of Educational Transformation to be able to utilize their schools in the evening, to be able to provide at least 1,000 more students the opportunity to get skills and get a decent job. Now, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I admire about the industrial plan that is planned out for Barbados by MIST is the fact that they are looking at the skills we already have. They tell us that university has been turning out over the past 10 years thousands of students who have science degrees, but we don't have the jobs for them to work in. I'm thinking of a student like Kezia, who did physics and chemistry. I'm thinking about Jad. These are young people from my constituency, bright, have talent, but we simply did not have the room to engage their skills in science and in technology. What we are working on now, Mr. Speaker, is to give them hope that the new changes that we're bringing to the industrial program for Barbados will allow us to engage them in meaningful jobs. Tourism is now back. Tourism has rebounded significantly under the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central. And we need to urgently provide training in hospitality for our young people so that they can get a start to that job. And that's one of the reasons why the ministry has started the Hospitality Gateway. Is going to be launched in April. And I have to tell you that the response to the program has been excellent. Over 2,000 young people applied for hospitality training, and I'm trusting that all members have been able to send their people to get the opportunity to be there. And this is going to allow us to train to international standards to meet the demand for tourism workers in Barbados. Now, there's an interesting piece that I think we need to know. The Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central talked about our GDP growth, that we grew by 4% in 2024. We know our reserves are at about 3.3 billion and that our debt to GDP ratio is trending down. But this is an interesting fact that all of us need to take note of. The World Bank's 2025 Country Engagement Note states for Barbados to be able to break out of the constraints that limit our ability to grow, we must focus on three things. We must focus on education, we must focus on skills, and here they're talking about technical skills, and we have to focus on climate resilience. That without doing that, Barbados cannot grow much further from where it is at. So it means that our human capital is the growth lever for the future. So people are indeed our most important resource, and that is why training is important. So our ministry will be targeting productivity raising skills across the board in digital so that we can better utilize digital programs to increase productivity and service. One of the main areas is the area of management. The difficulty that we experience in all of our organizations comes from not equipping our managers and supervisors with the skills to manage people. And when they cannot manage people, the workers will manage the organization to suit themselves. They will set the target for how much output you'll have. They'll set the culture for the organization. If you don't have well-trained management, well-trained supervisors, you cannot build the enterprises of the future. And that's why that's going to be one of the issues that will be addressed by the ministry. Now, one of the things, and I know many of my colleagues all suffer and watch as young people come to have clinics with us, who come and sit in front of us and say, I want a job. And many of them feel that we have jobs set aside that you can just go in and pick out from a cupboard and give to them, because that is their expectation, that's their understanding about how we work. When we ask the further question, well, what skills do you have? What certificates do you have? The answer comes back, nothing. What would you like to do? Anything. And when you see that, what it means is that the young person has lost the anchor and the direction for their life. And this is a serious matter. Too many of them have lost that anchor. And it is our responsibility as a nation to be able to help them to re-engage. Because in order for us to continue to grow, they have to have skills, because it's their skills that will grow the economy. And the growth of the economy is what will support the social services of this country, so that our seniors can live in peace and security and pay their bills and have money and get the medical care. That our working families can look forward to being able to do things for their children, to travel, to be able to give them the best education. None of that can happen without economic growth. So it means we have to fix what is happening with our young people. And what are the indicators as to what is happening? Youth unemployment tends to be higher than average employment. And there is an index. It's called the NEET index, N-E-E-T. N-E-E-T. And that stands for people who are not in education, so they're not in primary or secondary school. It stands for they're not employed at the moment. And it stands for they're not training for any particular job at the moment. It's called the NEET index. And this represents a problem for us, because it then becomes the source by which young people get caught up in behaviors that will destroy their lives and will destroy the country while it is at it. And what we have to do as a matter of urgency is to expand access to skills training. This is why this year in the budget, there is provision for a program called Skills Access. And I want all honourable colleagues and parents and guardians outside of this chamber listening to look out for the start of the Skills Access program. Now, we are not going to be training our young people in the same way that we did when they were in school. That did not work. That's why they left the system without anything to work with. What we are doing is changing the way in which we teach them. We are changing the way in which we organize their learning experience, meaning that many of them need to work while they're training. So you have to have programs that run morning, run evening. You have to have programs that are targeted and focus on a specific skill that they can immediately see it is going to get them a job. You have to work with industry to understand what are the jobs that are available and make sure, like what we did with the jobs registry, the honourable member for St. Peter, who has worked on the skills registry, to be able to put them on the skills registry so that employers can find the talent, because we've trained them and made it easy for them to find where they are. These are the things that are critical to do. But there is another piece that is important. Two pieces, Mr. Speaker. We have to have a more robust apprenticeship program. And I'm happy to say that the Ministry of Labour and the Barbados Vocational Training Board have worked together to put out a more robust, aggressive program for improving the apprenticeship system, so that young people can be attached to a business place or an organization and learn how to apply their skill in the real world. What you're seeking to do is to make them work ready, because the big complaint by employers and organizations is that when people come up from university, can't do anything. People come up with certificates and technical skills. They still need somebody to show them how to work, and that frustrates young people, and it frustrates businesses, and businesses then start pressing for work permits and all kinds of things. No, we're going to break that by making sure that we have a robust apprenticeship system, so that hundreds of young people can have the opportunity to be able to practice their skill and therefore be able to present themselves as work ready. The other program that we're working on this year is going to be the Prior Learning Assessment Program. That has already started, that's already in play, but we need to promote it more so that more people know about it. And what does that mean? It means that I was with my father in the mechanic shop and I learned how to fix cars. It means I learned how to paint cars, but I don't have a certificate to show you that I could do it. So how can an employer trust me because I say I've been painting cars for 10 years? He wants to see proof that I can do it. He doesn't want to take a chance putting me on somebody's car, and next thing you know, he got to pay the person. So the prior learning assessment program allows us to look at their work experience. It allows us to come and watch them perform tasks. It allows us to convert the level of skill that they currently have and identify at what level it can be certified so that they can take it to an employer and say, I can perform to this level and this is globally recognized. This is going to be a game changer for thousands of persons who have learned by just being on the job. This is going to move them away from feeling inferior to others who've been able to go and get big degrees. It's going to help them to come up from the shadows. This is going to be a big game changer for our young people, and that is why it has my 1000% support and effort to get it moving down the road. And this is one of the reasons why it is so important, the provision in this budget of the $230 million to allow us to be able to address these matters. And I know that at the moment they're seeking to sort out, making sure that we are adequately staffed, that we have enough people to drive the programs that will make a difference to families, make a difference to businesses, and make a difference to the financial security of this country. And I feel deeply privileged.
You want to remember as 2 more minutes.
I feel deeply privileged to have the honor to lead this particular ministry, to be able to ensure that people are properly skilled and to teach them in the way that makes sense for them, that helps them to build confidence, to build self-esteem, to be able to help them to develop the other social skills that they need for success. This is going to be important for their lives. Our population is too small to have thousands of young people unskilled and unemployable. It is unacceptable. It has to change. And this is the reason for the existence of this ministry, to make sure. And once we have the funds, we thank you, Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central and St. Michael North East. And once we have the staff, we will be going forward with a power and vigor to make these things happen. Just quickly, we're looking at expanding nursing. We're looking at expanding the cultural arts. We're discussing a drone academy. We're going to be opening a welding training facility. We're going to have big national programs. We're going to have the University College of Barbados, a whole set of things that we're going to be executing. And this year is going to be execution, execution, execution. So, Mr. Speaker, I am deeply proud of this budget. I am deeply pleased to be a part of a team that has been able to put together such a comprehensive approach to the transformation of Barbados. I ask all colleagues, I ask every civil servant, I ask every parent, I ask every pastor, I ask every community worker, let us work together to put our hands around our young people, begin to encourage them, talk to them, guide them, give them the information, facilitate them, so that they can grow and do well in this country. And when we do that, they will raise good families that will come after us and take Barbados on the global stage in a way that will make us proud for years to come, that when we are sitting in our rocking chairs and dribbling, they are busy top performing in every possible area in the globe. I look forward to that. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the time. I had a few more things to say, but enough is sufficient. And I thank you.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension until 2 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2 p.m. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2 p.m.